Thus, Chao Qin declined, saying, Erlang, you must be joking. How can a woman like me manage such matters? You're making it difficult for your sister-in-law. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaochuan realized she was saying she couldn't take charge. Not that she lacked the ability, so he pressed on, Sister-in-law, listen to me. I heard you used to manage business affairs at home, so I know you have the capability. Furthermore, this money and these goods belong to the family, and naturally, you should contribute. Uncle Fu can assist you. And if there are arrangements that make it inconvenient for you to appear, Uncle Fu can handle those. Zhang Xiaochuan's words made Chao Qin ponder, as she felt there was some truth in them. However, it still seemed inappropriate for a woman to manage family affairs, especially with Zhang Jingren and Zhang Xiaochuan. The two heads of the family, still around. There would inevitably be gossip. Chao Qin continued to refuse, saying, although what you say has some merit, it still seems inappropriate for a woman to take charge of all the family finances. It could easily invite rumors. Zhang Xiaochuan picked up on this and said, are you worried that my elder brother won't agree? Whatever I want to do, your elder brother won't oppose it. I just don't want anyone talking behind your back about the two brothers. Following Chao Qin's line of thought, he further persuaded her, since my elder brother is indifferent, then I am too. What else do you have to worry about? No, this matter should not be brought up again. Chao Qin firmly rejected. Although she felt swayed and almost agreed, her adherence to social conventions and norms made her ultimately refuse, and she turned to go back inside. Zhang Xiaochuan saw that things were about to fall through, but what could he do? Right, women are emotional beings, rational arguments won't work. Zhang Xiaochuan adjusted his expression and mentally prepared himself, then shamelessly laid down on the ground, blocking Chao Qin's way back inside. He rolled on the ground, shouting, they say the elder brother is like a father, and the elder sister-in-law is like a mother. Look at me, the younger brother, dying from exhaustion and not getting any help. I can't go on like this. He exaggerated his actions further, and Chao Qin, seeing this scene, first froze in surprise, then was amused by Zhang Xiaochuan's shameless antics. All right, get up. The ground is dirty. I'll agree to you, she finally said. It turns out that reasoning and discussing benefits with women is futile. Throwing a tantrum works much better. Since she agreed to Zhang Xiaochuan, Chao Qin stopped being pretentious and immediately joined Uncle Fu in counting the money and goods. Zhang Xiaochuan, considering the convenience of bookkeeping, specifically asked Su Changming to teach his sister-in-law and Uncle Fu about Arabic numerals and their application. At first, both were dismissive of this new type of number and of Su Changming as a young teacher, but after learning, they were amazed by both the numbers and Su Changming, lamenting their previous ignorance. Chapter 059, announcing the Menu Huang's family in Yizhou. With a crash, another vase shattered into pieces. Huang Antai, while smashing things, cursed Zhang Xiaochuan. You treacherous scoundrel, how ruthless. This is a plan to cut off our lineage. My lord, anger is harmful to your health. It's all over now, all over. How could I not have thought of this? Before he finished speaking, Huang Antai spat out blood and fainted, causing chaos in the Huang family. Li Quan was a bricklayer, and everyone usually called him Li the bricklayer, to the point that hardly anyone remembered his real name. At that moment, Li the bricklayer felt as if he were dreaming. He originally had farmland and lived a decent life, but unfortunately, his wife fell seriously ill and had to stay in bed, leading to the selling off of all their land. Fortunately, he still had his skills as a bricklayer, which allowed him to scrape by over the years. However, in the past 2 months, work had suddenly dried up, and now he not only had no money to buy medicine for his wife, but couldn't even afford to cook. Starving, Li the bricklayer was searching for work in the market. As the day passed its midpoint, he despondently thought that it seemed like he would have no work again today. Just then, he heard a call, Li the bricklayer. He quickly turned around to see it was Manager Tian from the tavern. Without waiting for a response, Manager Tian eagerly pulled out a piece of paper and said, can you build this? Li the bricklayer took a look and replied, this looks relatively simple, like a larger stove. I can build it, but... He intended to mention that the pot hole was too big for any pot, but Manager Tian interrupted him. As long as you can build it, come with me. Li the bricklayer was pleased, but out of caution and habit, he said, we haven't discussed the price yet. Manager Tian, who was ready to take Li the bricklayer away, paused and said, price is negotiable. You can name it, just come with me first. Li the bricklayer thought it was better to discuss the price first. He used to earn between 30 to 50 coins a day, charging less for those who were stingy or had no money, and more for those who were generous. Given that Manager Tian ran such a large tavern, he likely had money, and since he was in a hurry, Li the bricklayer decided to ask for more. After some thought, he said, I want 60 coins a day. As Li the bricklayer expected, Manager Tian immediately agreed. Just as the two were about to leave the market for the tavern, someone stopped them. Wait, I'll pay 80 coins. Come with me to the best tavern in Yizhou, Ronglo. Today, Ronglo was going to host a special banquet, with the owner personally overseeing it to avoid any mistakes. A few days earlier, Lei Shan had reached out to various taverns, inviting them to come taste the new dishes from Fulai Lu that had recently become popular in Shuzhou and Yizhou, with a promise to unveil the menu on site. Once this news broke, it created a stir in Yizhou and Shuzhou. Any tavern with a bit of strength knew that obtaining the new dishes from Fulai Lu was extremely difficult. If they could master the recipes and open their own shop, it would be hard not to have a booming business. Even though Shuzhou and Yizhou were filled with taverns, the region of the Great Tang was vast. It would be a different story in other places. The key was who could move faster, making this event unmissable for the big names in the catering industry. As the banquet day arrived, Fu Bo, Su Daniu, and Yao were at the entrance of Ronglo welcoming guests. They were technically welcoming guests, but in reality, they were collecting admission fees. Guests needed to show their invitation and pay 100 coins to enter. Even though that was a considerable amount, without an invitation, no money could allow entry. The owner of Ronglu looked at the steady stream of customers and the piled-up wealth, feeling a bit frustrated. He thought to himself, the Zhang family is really taking advantage. They charged so much just for the entrance fee. And yet today's banquet didn't give a single penny back. All the ingredients and drinks are on me. However, he couldn't say he was at a loss, as the Zhang family needed to borrow Ronglu's venue to announce their cooking secret. Naturally, the venue would benefit, having not only renovated the kitchen but also obtained the complete recipe. The cost of renovating the kitchen for free was no small expense, and those 10 large iron woks. Wow, they could easily sell for 100 coins each. Moreover, to prepare for today's banquet, he had trained his chefs thoroughly. Once the secret was revealed, the restaurant could immediately introduce new dishes, while others would still be renovating their kitchens and practicing their cooking. The various restaurant managers and owners, as well as chefs, continued to arrive. Each invitation allowed 3 people, yet they only charged 100 coins. The banquet hadn't started yet, but most of the guests had gathered and were chatting in groups. One person said, "Do you think the secret of today's new dish is real? What if it's fake?" Someone quickly replied, "It shouldn't be. They're making such a big fuss about it, with the Lei family involved and announcing it here at Ronglu. This isn't something to joke about." Another person added, "You can't deny that the new dish at Fu Lai Lu is truly a moneymaker and leaves a lasting impression." As he spoke, he recalled the taste and instinctively swallowed, unsure if it was due to the flavor or the prospect of making money. Another person responded, "Too bad, after today, this money-making dish will just become an ordinary dish." This person complained, "You sound so bitter. Why are you still here then?" The replying individual said, "Well, if I come, I can still make ordinary dishes. If I don't come, who will eat at my restaurant in the future? But you could learn from others. As the saying goes, one step slow, step by step slow. By the time I learn from others, my restaurant might close down. Besides, wouldn't others hide their skills? At least here, everyone is learning the same thing." Many people nodded in agreement, finding this reasoning sound. The person sighed again, saying, "It's frustrating that this soon-to-be common skill costs 100 coins. I have to come, but it's so annoying." Everyone chimed in, expressing their frustration about the unjust expenditure of 100 coins. At that moment, a sly-looking individual at the neighboring table was feeling quite pleased with himself. This person, named Tian Shua, was the owner and manager of Jin Yugo. He cleverly found partners for the other 2 slots on his invitation, which meant he only paid about 33 coins. Now, it seemed he had gained more than 60 coins compared to others, which naturally made him feel delighted. While everyone was discussing passionately, Zhang Xiaochuan had already walked to the center of the hall. Those who saw him stopped their conversations, although they didn't recognize him. He appeared to be the host of today's banquet. Gradually, the hall quieted down. Zhang Xiaochuan cleared his throat and said loudly, "My name is Zhang Xiaochuan, and I sincerely thank you all for coming." This unique introduction style was directly overlooked by the guests, as they were all waiting for what he would say next. Zhang Xiaochuan didn't waste words and introduced the process for announcing the new dishes today. First and foremost, it's about eating. Many people haven't tried the new style of stir-fried dishes, so a feast is prepared for everyone to sample first. The second step is to introduce how these dishes are cooked, and there will be an explanation in the kitchen later. The third step is to provide technical materials and answer questions, including recipes, stove diagrams, and a mysterious gift package. After explaining the process, Zhang Xiaochuan immediately arranged for the dishes to be served, preparing a total of 12 dishes, for vegetarian stir-fries, for mixed stir-fries, and 4 braised dishes including chicken, duck, fish, and meat. Once the dishes were served, everyone dug in without waiting for an invitation. The vegetarian stir-fry retained the crispness and tenderness of the vegetables, along with their unique aroma. The stir-fried vegetables were a vibrant green and delicious. There was no need for words, as everyone enjoyed them in silence. The mixed stir-fries, quickly cooked at high temperatures, locked in the moisture of the meat, making it tender, juicy, and visually appealing, also prompting silent enjoyment. The braised dishes featured pork that was tender and flavorful without being greasy. The fish was first fried and then braised, allowing it to absorb the flavors without any fishy taste, achieving a perfect salty and fresh combination. The chicken was dry-fried to remove moisture, focusing on the addition of certain herbs, then braised to finish, resulting in firm, tender, and springy meat. The duck was stir-fried with various spices, creating a fragrant and crispy texture. The flavors were exceptional, prompting continued silence as people savored the dishes. In the large dining hall, dozens of tables were set up, and the only sounds were the crunching of food and the occasional clink of chopsticks against bowls and plates. After trying each dish, discussions gradually began. It was surprising how visually appealing the stir-fried greens were, a vibrant green like jade. Not only did they look good, but their taste was also excellent, fully bringing out the freshness of the vegetables. As for the meat, it was pork, and indeed, it was the best pork I had ever tasted. No unpleasant odor and not tough at all, simply amazing. And the chicken, with something that seemed like medicinal herbs, had a surprisingly good flavor. I take back my initial statement. This entire table of dishes was worth every penny spent. With various discussions praising the delicious food, Zhang Xiaochuan felt very satisfied with the effects of the dishes. Finally, a winter melon and pork rib soup was served. Everyone was basically full. And since Zhang Xiaochuan had chosen mostly strong-flavored dishes to stimulate their taste buds, a light soup was urgently needed to cleanse the palate. A sip of soup provided a perfect conclusion to the tasting. After the sounds of slurping soup subsided, Zhang Xiaochuan said, "Everyone has enjoyed the dishes. And I believe those who haven't tried the new cuisine now have a clear understanding. Our new dishes primarily focus on stir-frying, mainly using iron woks for cooking." Everyone expressed disbelief at how such delicious food could be made with an iron wok. In fact, at that time, the iron woks were quite small, resembling soup pots. Zhang Xiaochuan continued, "Next, let me take you to see how these dishes are prepared." A group of people arrived in the kitchen, where different chefs prepared the dishes that had just been served one by one. During the cooking process, they provided simple explanations about terms related to stir-frying, such as blanching, frying, and reducing sauce, which everyone became familiar with. At the same time, they also had their first visual encounter with a cast iron wok, its regular semicircular shape gleaming darkly. Besides the wok, there were spatulas, large iron spoons, and strainers. The group was very attentive. Certainly the most serious students Zhang Xiaochuan had ever seen. Stir-frying itself was not particularly mysterious. Once the veil was lifted, everyone felt that the dishes from the restaurant were just so. Although they were delicious, they felt capable of doing the same. However, out of caution, they still studied diligently. After the observation, they were led back to the main hall, where the tables had been cleared and cushions were neatly arranged on the floor. Aside from the kneeling posture, which felt a bit awkward to Zhang Xiaochuan, everything else resembled a staff meeting from later times. Zhang Xiaochuan returned to the front, raised his hand to signal for quiet, and once the noise subsided, he said, "Having reached this point, I believe everyone has gained quite a bit. Next, there are two things to discuss. The first is that I will distribute materials to everyone, which, as I mentioned earlier, consists of a recipe book and blueprints for the stove." With a wave of his hand, someone immediately appeared with a tray to distribute the materials. Once they were handed out, Zhang Xiaochuan continued, "In addition to the recipe book, there is also a big gift for everyone. As the saying goes, to do a good job, one must first sharpen their tools. With the skills learned, having no wok would be pointless. Currently, I am the only one capable of forging such large woks." Upon hearing this, the crowd realized the implication. There was indeed nowhere to buy such a wok. If only Zhang Xiaochuan possessed this forging technique, it would be a hefty price to pay. However, the current situation left them with no choice. If they didn't buy it, someone else would, and then others would introduce new-style stir-frying, jeopardizing their own businesses. This was a blatant strategy. Zhang Xiaochuan continued, "These woks are all cast from high-quality iron, not only using premium materials, but also crafted in one piece through standardized manufacturing. The quality and size are consistent, and each wok weighs a hefty 77 pounds. The entire wok is smooth and perfectly round, showcasing exquisite craftsmanship and guaranteed quality." Zhang Xiaochuan spoke of various terms that sounded impressive, and one term that resonated with everyone was high-quality iron. 49 pounds of high-quality iron would cost over 30 coins. And considering the cost of casting such a large wok, even selling it for 50 coins would be a bargain. This high-quality iron wok will be sold for 50 coins each. Please don't think it's too expensive or rush to buy, because today we are not selling them. A wave of booing erupted from the crowd, feeling teased by the announcement. Zhang Xiaochuan ignored the noise and continued, "Today, the iron woks are being given away for free, along with spatulas and large iron spoons for stir-frying. Each invitation will come with 3 sets. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd erupted in excitement. Feeling they had struck gold, and discussions sparked everywhere. 3 sets of cooking tools could be worth 200 coins. Exactly, this is a great deal. Not only did we eat and learn, but we also received tools. There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Isn't this just a typical case of losing money for the sake of publicity? Who could argue otherwise?" At this moment, only Tian Shua, who had started to feel a bit too pleased with himself, was pounding his chest and lamenting his losses. Seeing the audience engage in a group chat, Zhang Xiaochuan quickly raised his voice to ask everyone to quiet down. The cookware set would be picked up later from the back door. And now it was time for the QA session. Anyone with questions could ask freely, but to maintain order, please raise your hand first, and I'll call on you to stand and speak. As soon as Zhang Xiaochuan finished speaking, someone immediately raised their hand. Zhang Xiaochuan pointed to this person, "Please stand up and speak." The person stood up right away. It was Tian Shua, as mentioned earlier. He looked rather lean and had a cunning appearance, speaking in a sharp voice. "If someone has an invitation but didn't register in time, can they pay now to register?" Clearly, this was because some individuals, hoping to save money, intended to share an invitation among 3 people. Now that the gifts were worth far more than 100 coins, they regretted it. The others recognized this as well, so before Zhang Xiaochuan could respond, another person from the audience spoke up. "I oppose this. This absolutely cannot happen. Why should you benefit now when you didn't come earlier?" Most people had brought their own guests with a single invitation, so they looked down on this idea of sharing invitations and voiced their agreement. Zhang Xiaochuan smiled at Tian Shua and shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he had seen what was happening. Tian Shua sat down dejectedly, muttering under his breath, "It's not really taking advantage. At least 4 people didn't get to eat." Before Zhang Xiaochuan could ask anything, another hand shot up. This person was following up on Tian Shua's question, asking, "What will happen to the gifts for those who were invited but didn't come?" This was a question many people wanted to ask, so Zhang Xiaochuan replied, "Although the items are limited, We still need to prepare cookware according to the number of invitations sent out. The leftover cookware from those who didn't come will be sold at a 30 discount later, meaning it will cost 40 coins. If anyone is interested, please remember to come and register. It's first come, first served. Everyone was quite satisfied with this answer, and the Q&A continued. The next question was, why were all the dishes served at the banquet made from low-cost meat? Doesn't this cooking method make beef and lamb taste bad? Zhang Xiaochuan thought for a moment and said, finally, someone is asking about cooking. I don't agree with the notion of cheap meat. There is no such thing as expensive or cheap meat. The charm of cooking lies in the ability to blend 100 flavors into one pot. It shouldn't be determined by the ingredients themselves. All ingredients are the best. There is no inferior ingredient, only chefs who don't know how to cook. Learning to turn more ingredients into delicious dishes will expand the variety of meals you can prepare. Upon hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement, and soon many more questions followed. Chapter 061. The bricklayer, seeing that the time was almost up, Zhang Xiaochuan announced that it was time for the final question. Soon enough, the last question was asked. If you were to open a restaurant with this cooking skill, you would surely be able to compete with a well-known establishment. Why make it public? This only diminishes everyone's advantage, which is quite unfortunate. The person speaking paused, and Zhang Xiaochuan continued, saying, it's simply harming oneself, which is quite dishonorable in business. Isn't it? The questioner fell silent, clearly agreeing with Zhang Xiaochuan. He went on to explain, perhaps many here don't know that I learned to cook with an iron wok from an old master. Later, I taught the Huang family. But they ruthlessly kicked me out. That's one reason, or perhaps a pretext. The second reason is that the old master said delicious food should be shared with the world. I admit I was selfish, thinking I could first earn some money from this skill before making it public. Who knew I would face punishment so soon and be betrayed by the Huang family? That's why I am revealing it today. Upon hearing this, everyone praised Zhang Xiaochuan for his righteousness and condemned the Huang family as despicable. In reality, Zhang Xiaochuan's true reason was that he only knew a few dishes. To enjoy more delicious food, competition is necessary. The market must expand to bring forth a wider variety of flavors. It took nearly 800 years from the emergence of the Iron Wok in the Song dynasty to the formation of the 8 major cuisines in the Qing dynasty. Although the evolution was lengthy, with his help, delicious food would surely emerge like bamboo shoots after rain. As for the Huang family, there are many ways to deal with them. Now it's just a matter of seizing the opportunity. Zhang Xiaochuan publicly announcing this was a way to retaliate against the Huang family. Not only did his reputation remain intact, but it also elevated his image. While the Huang family became the greedy ones, achieving 2 goals with one action. Zhang Xiaochuan continued, don't think that because cooking skills are now public, they lack value. I must say, that is quite superficial. Steaming, boiling, and roasting are methods everyone knows, yet various restaurants thrive on these techniques. Moreover, a master's students can vary in skill. Even with the same dish, the results can differ. Today, I'm only teaching some basic dishes. You can integrate and innovate. Develop new recipes, seek new ingredients, and experiment with new seasonings. Culinary arts are an endless exploration, and I believe everyone has a culinary god within them. Today, I've merely showcased a new cooking method. This is an opportunity, a chance to surpass others. Strong individuals never complain about their environment. Let us move forward to our respective kitchens. After finishing, Zhang Xiaochuan stepped down, signaling the end of the recipe reveal. His statement that strong individuals never complain about their environment stunned the audience, leaving them in awe. At that moment, a plump chef suddenly stood up, exclaiming, no, my blood is boiling. I want to cook, and I can't wait. With this shout, everyone was ignited. Some felt their inner chefs awaken, while others wanted to seize this opportunity before anyone else. So whether it was the owner, the shopkeeper, or the chef, they all rushed out to see a peculiar flow of traffic on the street. There were horse-drawn carriages, sedan chairs, and even people riding horses, but without exception, everyone had 2 large black pots hanging. Although everyone was excited at the banquet announcing the use of iron pots for cooking, the reality was that without a stove, you couldn't cook. Consequently, masons became highly sought after. Tian Shua cleverly used one invitation letter to get 3 families involved, but ultimately faced the consequences. Not only did he have only 1 set of iron pots, but he was also criticized by 2 other shopkeepers in the same trade. Fortunately, he managed to buy 2 pots at the end of the banquet. Otherwise, with just 1 pot, how could he prepare new style dishes? Tian Shua was looking for a mason when he saw Li the mason, who was also looking for work. They agreed on a wage of 60 coins a day to help him fix the stove, but unexpectedly, someone else entered the fray. Wait, I'll pay 80 coins a day. Tian Shua glanced over and realized it was his rival, shopkeeper Xian, who was also competing for the invitation letter. Not wanting to be polite, Tian Shua said, what do you mean, Xian? I've already negotiated this price. Shopkeeper Xian, still harboring resentment from their previous competition, responded provocatively, negotiated? The market hasn't opened yet, we can still talk. Tian Shua knew he was at fault for the invitation letter issue, so he didn't want to linger on it. Ignoring shopkeeper Xian's aggressive tone, he turned to Li the mason and said, I'll give you 80 coins, let's go. Just as he reached out to pull Li away, shopkeeper Xian blocked his hand and said, I'll offer 100 coins, come with me. Li the mason was confused. How could the wage go up like this? But he was desperate for work, so he thought, why not? I'll just take the money. Before he knew it, his wage had been raised to 200 coins. This is why people in ancient times were so straightforward. Upon hearing 200 coins, Lee the Mason quickly interjected, "Gentlemen, please listen to me. I can't accept such a high wage. There's no point in you two competing. I'd prefer to follow the one who came first. So let us go with Tion." Although Lee the Mason wasn't particularly savvy, he was articulate enough from walking the streets. And his words not only quelled the dispute, but also provided a solution. Tion Shua gave him a thumbs up, saying, "Lee the Mason, you're a trustworthy man. Don't worry, I'll still pay you 200 coins. Let us go now." Seeing that he couldn't steal Lee away, shopkeeper Xin decided to follow Tion Shua to the site, hoping to secure the Mason for himself. In the early morning, Lee the Mason returned home, dragging his exhausted body. His gaunt face bore the dark circles from staying up all night, but he couldn't hide his joy. As soon as he entered, he called out, "Wife, I'm back. Guess how much I earned?" Perhaps too excited, Lee the Mason forgot that he hadn't returned all night and that his wife was bedridden. Seeing her on the bed reminded him, and he slapped himself on the back of the head. "It's all my fault. I forgot to ask someone to take care of you while I was out looking for work. You haven't eaten since yesterday, have you? Let me go make you something to eat." Lying in bed, the wife looked at the remorseful Tyler and immediately spoke to comfort him. "No need to worry. I ate yesterday. Sister Wong next door brought some food over. Look at how happy you are. How much did you earn?" Upon hearing that his wife had already eaten, the Tyler relaxed and decided to keep her guessing. "Guess for yourself. Look at your silly face. Did you earn 100 coins?" The Tyler proudly replied, "Less than that." "Less? Then I can't guess anymore." "All right, I earned 400 coins in total." As he spoke, he took out a bundle from his clothes, neatly containing 4 strings of coins. His wife looked at the money he brought out, not with surprise, but with more fear, trembling as she said, "How did you earn so much money in one night? Didn't we agree that no matter how poor we are, we shouldn't gamble?" Seeing that his wife misunderstood, the Tyler quickly explained, "It's not money made from gambling. I earned it by doing work." "You're still lying to me. In the past, doing work would only earn 30 to 50 coins, and even with a generous employer, it would only be an extra 10 or 8 coins. With so much money, how can I believe you earned it from work?" She started to sob. The Tyler soothed his wife, asking her to let him finish speaking, and hurriedly recounted what happened yesterday. Only then did his wife stop crying and say, "So that's how it is. That's really great. With this money, we can get through. That shopkeeper Tion is our benefactor. We must thank him properly and do a good job." Doing a good job is natural, but the benefactor is just an unrelated person. It turned out that while working, he chatted with Tion Shua, who mentioned Zhang Xiaochuan's announcement of the menu, leading the Tyler to believe that he had received Zhang Xiaochuan's favor to get such good work. Moreover, according to Tion Shua, there were plenty of jobs available recently, and the prices should definitely be higher. Seeing his wife's puzzled expression, the Tyler continued, "The benefactor's surname is Zhang. Once we're done with this busy period, I'll find him to thank him." His wife nodded, saying, "That is indeed necessary." At that moment, someone knocked on the door outside. "Is the Tyler home? I have work for you." After Zhang Xiaochuan announced the menu, various restaurants gradually launched new dishes. Although the prices were still high due to ingredient issues, they were significantly lower than what the Huang family had charged before. Therefore, diners enjoyed similar dishes. Remembering that they had to pay several times the current price to eat before, and they couldn't even get a table, which unintentionally drew some resentment towards the Huang family. At the Izhou Fulai building, Huang Antai sat in the main hall, sternly questioning the manager standing beside him. Was there no advance notice about the price reduction for the reopening? The manager, trembling, replied, "There was advance notice. Posters about the reopening were posted at all major traffic routes in the city, and there are notices on the bulletin board at the store entrance." "Really promoted? Then why is there not a single customer?" Faced with Huang Antai's probing, the manager was on the verge of tears. Although he knew the answer, he couldn't say it. Did he not have a clue about it? He could only pretend to be ignorant and said, "I truly don't know. The promotional posters are still up, so it shouldn't be like this." Huang Antai shot the manager a glare, initially ready to continue his anger, but suddenly his expression changed to a smile as he stood up and walked out. Huang Antai stopped a middle-aged man dressed in elegant clothing and said with a smile, "Isn't this Boss Lu? It's already mealtime. Come in and have a meal before you continue your journey." It turned out that this man was a regular customer of the restaurant, often visiting in the past, but unexpectedly chose not to enter today. Boss Lu replied, "No need. I've made an appointment with manager Hu to eat at another restaurant." Seeing Boss Lu's cold tone, Huang Antai curiously asked, "Why don't you eat at our place and instead go to that other restaurant?" Boss Lu looked a bit surprised and retorted, "You don't know why?" Huang Antai, slightly confused, replied, "How would I know?" Boss Lu shook his head and pointed to the manager behind him, saying, "You can ask him." Without waiting for Huang Antai to respond, he walked away directly. Huang Antai, with a gloomy expression, turned to the manager and asked, "I've treated you well, so just tell me what's going on." The manager looked troubled, and after thinking for a moment, he slapped his thigh and made a decision, saying, "It's not that I don't want to say, but it's really for the owner's good. Given the current situation, sigh." The manager sighed deeply and continued, "This is all because the Zhang family's young one made the menu public." Huang Antai interrupted him, "I know that. And we even suspended our operations to adjust the menu prices to retain customers. Is there any secret in this?" The manager replied, "Exactly. Last time, when the owner learned that the menu had been made public, he fainted. So we didn't dare to tell him the specifics about the menu release. It's not intentional concealment. It's just that the madam is worried about the owner's health and forbids me from saying anything. The manager was rambling, and Huang Antai, growing impatient, interrupted him in an authoritative tone. Speak. The manager, realizing that the owner should have figured out the reasons, added, perhaps there have been too many recent events, and the owner is overly exhausted. Huang Antai, now slightly angry, interrupted again, insisting, speak. Knowing he had to speak, the manager said, when the menu was announced, that young one from the Zhang family also brought up the grievances between the Huang and Zhang families, so now everyone is saying. The manager hesitated again. Although Huang Antai had an idea of what was being said, he still wanted to hear it from the manager, so he commanded again, speak. The manager, seeing no way out, thought it was better to just say it, regardless of Huang Antai's increasingly green face, and continued, they say our Huang family is ungrateful, making ill-gotten gains, which is why customers are unwilling to come here. Moreover, when we launched the new dishes, we snatched a lot of business from our competitors, who have now united to suppress our restaurant. And that's not all. The manager thought that since he was already speaking, he might as well continue. Not caring about Huang Antai's worsening expression, he added, due to the owner's previous compensation to the Zhang family, all the money and goods were withdrawn. And now the business is poor, leading us to a dead end. The mention of a dead end struck Huang Antai like a heavy blow to the chest. He felt a surge of heat in his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood, fainting on the spot. After the menu was announced, Zhang Xiaochuan rushed back to his family estate, as he had just received news that the first batch of parts was nearly completed. He hurried back to oversee the assembly of the parts. After several days of sleepless effort, I finally assembled the equipment, which is essentially a distillation apparatus. This device is quite large. At the higher front end, there is a storage space resembling a water tank. A pipe extends from the bottom, leading into a furnace, where the pipe takes an S shape before emerging from the bottom of the furnace and connecting to a very large cylindrical iron tank. From the bottom to the top of the iron tank, there are 8 iron pipes, each passing through an independent water tank, with the ends resembling another water storage tank. Due to the many handmade parts and iron pipes, there are gaps at the connections, and there isn't a good solution to fix this. Therefore, I decided to use gold, which has good ductility, to wrap the gaps. The entire connection points of the distillation apparatus are wrapped in gold, totaling about 10 pounds of gold. According to modern pricing and currency conversion, the gold alone for this distillation device amounts to 2 million, which is truly extravagant. Old Mo looked at this strange apparatus and asked, what are you making this for, Erlang? Zhang Xiaochuan noticed Old Mo's peculiar expression and didn't rush to answer. Instead, he countered, what do you think it's for? Old Mo swallowed hard and said, I've always thought Erlang has been taught by an immortal, and I have some understanding of alchemy. This resembles the furnace used by Taoists to refine elixirs, but your design is unique. Could it be? He hesitated, stopping short of finishing his thought. Zhang Xiaochuan guessed that Old Mo was about to ask whether this was used for refining elixirs, and was about to tease him when Su Changming interjected. Su Changming said earnestly, I know. Looking at these pipes, they go from high to low, and this part is clearly for heating. From this point to the tank, the pipe inside is higher than the connecting pipe. Therefore, the first part retains liquid, which gets heated and vaporized during the flow, and is then collected in the final tank. With so many diverging pipes, there is only one substance that can produce such a variety of materials after distillation, and that is what the master referred to as the industrial lifeblood, petroleum. So, this is a petroleum distiller. Although Zhang Xiaochuan's teasing was interrupted, he felt somewhat choked, but was impressed by Su Changming's accurate analysis. Seeing him grow so quickly filled Zhang Xiaochuan with pride. Su Changming had learned from the textbooks Zhang Xiaochuan compiled based on modern education. So his words momentarily stunned Zhang Xiaochuan, making him feel as if he had traveled back in time, walking through a science museum with his son. However, Zhang Xiaochuan also proved that following the modern educational model could rapidly cultivate a group of researchers with rational scientific thinking. This way, his plan to create civilization could advance quickly. If he were to do it alone, he would only achieve mechanization in his lifetime. Therefore, talent cultivation is the next important plan. What shocked more than Zhang Xiaochuan was Mo Lauer. He couldn't understand the long string of words at all, but he still felt it was impressive. However, Mo Lauer was also an extremely intelligent person. He noticed that Su Changming's way of speaking and tone were becoming more and more similar to Zhang Xiaochuan's. This indicated something. It suggested that the knowledge Zhang Xiaochuan possessed could be taught. Thinking of this made Mo Lauer uneasy. Perhaps Zhang Xiaochuan's knowledge could help him achieve his long-buried dream. With that thought, he blurted out, Erlang, can you ascend to the heavens? Zhang Xiaochuan didn't know how ancient people felt about someone wanting to ascend, but as a person from later generations, hearing such a statement would surely sound like an insult. Just as he was about to praise Su Changming, he was choked up for the second time, inevitably feeling annoyed. He didn't hold back and retorted to Mo Lauer, you want to ascend? Your whole family can ascend. Yes, I really want to ascend. Can you help me ascend? Seeing Mo Lauer's earnest acknowledgement, a wave of helplessness surged in Zhang Xiaochuan's heart. At the same time, he couldn't help but admire Mo Lauer's skill in insults. Although he said, Uncle Moer, why are you being so disrespectful? What is the point of cursing me? Mo Lauer looked confused and said, what insult? I'm just asking if your knowledge includes the ability to ascend. Zhang Xiaochuan realized that in ancient times, this phrase might not be considered an insult. He had jumped to conclusions. He then seriously asked, "You want to ascend?" After asking, Zhang Xiaochuan felt a bit awkward. It still sounded like an insult to him. But Mo Lauer didn't he feel that way at all. The man in his 40s was as excited as a child, replying, "Yes." Zhang Xiaochuan thought for a moment and said, "There is a possibility. But it won't happen anytime soon. If you want to ascend, you'll have to wait a bit longer." Mo Lauer excitedly said, "You mean you already have plans to ascend?" Zhang Xiaochuan thought to himself, "I don't want to ascend. You want to ascend." Well, he does want to ascend. But the phrase sounds so awkward. He replied, "There is a possibility, but saying ascend sounds strange. Can we say flight instead in the future?" Mo Lauer eagerly agreed and asked, Sure. When can we fly?" Zhang Xiaochuan pointed to the distillation apparatus and said, "This is the start of our journey to flight. With it, we are one step closer to flying." Mo Lauer continued to ask, "What do we need to do?" This question stumped Zhang Xiaochuan because it was a bit too far-fetched. However, thinking about Mo Lauer's unparalleled mechanical talent, if he could teach him clearly, it would save him a lot of trouble. With that in mind, Zhang Xiaochuan slapped his thigh and thought, right, whether teaching one or two people, it's still teaching. If both of these geniuses could be taught, it would make things much easier for him. So, Zhang Xiaochuan said, "Uncle Moer, this isn't something that can be explained in just a few sentences, but if you really want to know, I can teach you all this knowledge. What do you think?" As soon as Mo Lauer heard this, without saying a word, he lifted his clothing and was about to kneel. Zhang Xiaochuan quickly grabbed him and said, "Uncle Moer, what are you doing? You're going to shorten my lifespan." Mo Lauer wanted to kneel again, but was firmly held back by Zhang Xiaochuan, ultimately having to give up. He patted Zhang Xiaochuan, signaling that he would no longer kneel, and asked Zhang Xiaochuan to let him go. After releasing him, Zhang Xiaochuan asked, "Uncle Mo, what are you doing? Is it really necessary to teach knowledge like this? You scare me to death." Mo Laui sighed and said, "Alas, Erlang, although you are open-minded, these skills have a lineage. Teaching them so casually is fine for you, but can your master allow you to do this?" Zhang Xiaochuan thought that a serious explanation would probably be useless. So he casually made up a story. "My master is a celestial being, and these side techniques are not even mainstream in the celestial realm. So there's no formal lineage to worry about." Zhang Xiaochuan was joking seriously, but Mo Laui took it as the truth, and, once Zhang Xiaochuan finished, he exclaimed that it was impressive, indeed a celestial method. Mo Laui continued, "Although these techniques are insignificant in the celestial realm, they are remarkable in the human world. So I can't just learn from you for free. How about I teach you the Mo family legacy?" Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaochuan's curiosity sparked. "What? The Mo family? The incredibly mysterious Mo family? So you're a descendant of the Mo family?" Mo Laui sighed deeply again, and Zhang Xiaochuan felt that he had never seen him so emotional before. Mo Laui then said, "I am indeed a legitimate descendant of the Mo family." Zhang Xiaochuan urged him, "Hurry up and tell me more." Mo Laui reminisced and said, "When I was 6 years old, there was a family incident, and I followed my parents to the Shu region to seek refuge with relatives. Unfortunately, we encountered some bad people along the way, and my parents were killed. But I was saved by someone. His name was Mo Tianji, the master of the Mo family's Tianji Hall. He took me as his disciple to learn mechanism techniques. By the time I was 12, I had mastered his true teachings. And it was then that he revealed to me that he was a member of the Plum Blossom Imperial Guard, and naturally, I was his successor. The reason the Mo family served the emperor was to gain royal support to revive the Mo family, but in reality, the Mo family was merely used and received no support. However, we had already served the emperor and had no opportunity to withdraw." Although Zhang Xiaochuan was listening with great interest, he wondered how this related to flying, so he interrupted Mo Laui and asked, "What does this have to do with your desire to ascend?" Mo Laui, momentarily interrupted, shot Zhang Xiaochuan a rare glare. "Why are you in such a hurry? I'll get to that." He continued, "It was the year I finished my training when the dragon change occurred. I followed my master to carry out a mission and was trapped in a valley. Because my master was still powerful, the enemy did not want to suffer heavy losses and planned to trap us in the valley. We were trapped for 5 whole days. Hunger made me lose my will to fight. I wished I could fly out, but unfortunately, that wish did not come true. Later, seeing that waiting was futile, my master, despite his remaining strength, desperately protected me to escape. With my master's death, the desire to fly became my obsession, and I was willing to give everything for it." As Mo Laui spoke, tears welled up in his eyes, showing how deeply this memory affected him. However, Zhang Xiaochuan was not only focused on that. He curiously asked, "So according to what you're saying, you were just an ordinary Plum Blossom Imperial Guard. How did you become a leader of a large pavilion?" Mo Air, calming his emotions, replied, "After my master passed away, we were labeled as disruptors of the dynasty by the authorities, and a crackdown ensued. I also hoped that if I were to be captured, as my master's disciple, I should take on more responsibility. So I inherited the position of the leader of the Great Pavilion. As for the head of the Mo family's Heavenly Machine Hall, since I am the only disciple of my master, I naturally have to shoulder the responsibility of passing on the Mo family's legacy." Zhang Xiaochuan nodded and said, "I see. So what is your real name?" "We Mo family descendants do not have our own names. As the head of the Heavenly Machine Hall, my name is also part of the legacy, so I am called Mo Tianji." Zhang Xiaochuan thought to himself that this was quite a stretch. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something and asked, "If you teach me the Mo family's machinery techniques, wouldn't I also be a descendant of the Mo family?" If you were to pass away, would I also have to be called Mo Tianji? Mo Tianji nodded. Zhang Xiaochuan mentally cursed Mo Tianji's ancestors, but said, forget it. I don't have the fortune to inherit the Mo family's machinery techniques. Just as Mo Tianji was about to persuade him further, Su Changming's voice came over. Master, the distillation device is assembled. When are we going to test it? Zhang Xiaochuan suddenly realized that Su Changming was still there, and everything Mo Tianji had just said was overheard by him. He quickly defended Su Changming, saying, Changming is still a child. He shouldn't say anything indiscreet. Mo Tianji knew Zhang Xiaochuan was referring to their earlier conversation but smiled gently, saying, Su Dainyu is a descendant of the Meihua inner guards. Zhang Xiaochuan's mouth dropped open in surprise. Mo Tianji added with emphasis, otherwise, anyone could just bring you back. You think that a slave contract is worth anything? Zhang Xiaochuan slapped his forehead, thinking, you guys really are a secretive organization. You play this game quite well. Not wanting to continue on that topic, he shifted the conversation. To test the distillation device, we still need to get the raw materials ready. We're all quite tired from the past few days. So let's call it a day for now. As Zhang Xiaochuan stepped outside, he noticed it was almost dark. By the time he returned to the courtyard, night had fallen. Feeling a bit hungry, he led Su Changming to the kitchen to find something to eat. Sister Su knew that Zhang Xiaochuan often missed meal times due to his experiments, so she would always save him some food. As soon as Zhang Xiaochuan entered the kitchen, he smelled the aroma of millet porridge, with 2 portions of stir-fried dishes still warm and ready to eat. Both of them were quite hungry after a long day, so they finished their meal in silence and returned to their respective rooms. Back in his room, Zhang Xiaochuan found a lamp lit on the table. He had instructed that if he returned late, the lamp should be left on. Initially, Fu Bo thought it was a waste, but Yao Air was particularly obedient. Every time Fu Bo blew out the lamp, Yao Air would light it again. Over time, Fu Bo simply stopped bothering with it. Sitting at the table, Zhang Xiaochuan prepared to outline his next steps. According to his time travel simulation plan, the first phase of accumulating initial funds and influence had been easily completed. The next phase involved establishing a sustainable development complex with absolute armed forces, which simply put, meant producing guns, cannons, and building factories. What has been produced now is, at best, an advanced workshop, which cannot be considered an industrial production site at all. While Zhang Xiaochuan was deep in thought, a thin, yellowed face with dark circles appeared before him, weakly calling out, Master. Zhang Xiaochuan was startled again, but this time he wasn't frozen in place. Instead, he instinctively kicked the person in front of him. After this movement, he felt less afraid, and just as he was about to kick again, the person on the ground slowly got up, and Zhang Xiaochuan took a closer look at this person who looked almost like a tuberculosis patient. He really resembled Huang Pengzi. Well, Huang the Thin. Zhang Xiaochuan recalled the betrayal by the Huang family. Although all information indicated that Huang Pengzi wasn't the mastermind, they were still from the same family. So he said unhappily, first, I'm not as impressive as you think. I wouldn't take on a disciple who betrays their master and ancestors. And I never intended to formally accept you as a disciple, so don't call me that anymore. Second, why have you become so thin? And why did you come to my room in the middle of the night? You nearly scared me to death. To his surprise, Huang Pengzi didn't answer directly, but quietly walked over to a clear spot by the door and knelt down. Zhang Xiaochuan thought it was strange that everyone liked to kneel, and since he still felt resentment towards the Huang family, he let him kneel there. After Huang Pengzi settled down, he said, I'm here to apologize to you, master. Because I wasn't around, I knelt outside the door waiting for you. Uncle Fu saw me kneeling at the door and thought it was inappropriate, so he let me wait in the room. I felt guilty, so I kept kneeling in the room, and then at this point, Huang Pengzi seemed a bit embarrassed and continued stammering. Then because I was too tired, I just lay on the ground and fell asleep. I only woke up when you came back just now. Zhang Xiaochuan thought to himself, I'm also at a loss. Can't there be a more normal way to make an entrance? Every time it's in the middle of the night, and I don't know if I'm afraid of ghosts or not. Sooner or later, you'll scare me to death. Zhang Xiaochuan replied irritably. So you scared me half to death. Huang Pengzi touched his chest, which had been kicked, and said in a low voice, yes. Zhang Xiaochuan pointed at Huang Pengzi's face, reminding him that he hadn't yet explained why he had become so thin. Huang Pengzi continued, I knew that the new dishes at the Filelu and Shuzhou would eventually be discovered by my family. I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly. I thought that once discovered, I could negotiate some terms with that old man, but I didn't even get a chance to speak before being captured and locked up. Zhang Xiaochuan's expression darkened. How could he call his own father that old man? This really showed a lack of filial piety. Seeing Huang Pengzi rambling on, Zhang Xiaochuan pointedly asked, I asked how you got so thin? Huang Pengzi unhurriedly replied, I was locked at home and not allowed to go out, so I resisted by fasting. Later, when I heard that old man was going to deal with you, I felt very guilty and lost my appetite even more. So I ended up losing a bit of weight. He heard that the chubby guy had never betrayed himself from beginning to end, which made Zhang Xiaochuan feel much better. At least he didn't have the chance to misjudge someone. However, he couldn't help but complain. This is what you call losing a bit of weight? Even Li Huanying isn't as slim as you. Huh, who is Li Huanying? That is not important. What matters is that I have now severed ties with your family. Why are you here to find me? I can't possibly forgive you. I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. Even if you begged me, I wouldn't forgive you. For a moment, Zhang Xiaochuan felt like he was socially dead. So, you're not here to ask for my forgiveness. You just want to show off and scare me, and then get revenge on that old man of yours, right? With that thought, He didn't hold back. Since you're not asking for forgiveness, what's there to talk about? Just get lost far away. You annoy me just by looking at you. The chubby guy realized there was a misunderstanding and quickly said, "It's not that I don't want to seek Master S forgiveness, but I feel unworthy of it." Zhang Xiaochuan heard this and thought, well, at least that sounds like a decent person. Chapter 065. Private Chef. The chubby guy continued, "But that old man raised me. I can't just watch him die like this. I know only Master can save him, so I'm risking my life to ask. I'm willing to sacrifice my life to save that old man's life." Zhang Xiaochuan was also at a loss, thinking, what does this even mean? So he said, "What life are you talking about? This isn't a world of immortals. Why would I want your life? Besides, I'm not a doctor. How could I save your father?" The chubby guy didn't mind Zhang Xiaochuan's sarcasm and continued. "As the saying goes, heart diseases need heart medicine. That old man fell ill because the family has fallen on hard times. As long as we find a way to revive the Fulai building, he will naturally recover without any medicine." Although the chubby guy spoke like a jerk, his filial piety was genuine, and someone like him could become a partner. Zhang Xiaochuan had already avenged himself, but he couldn't just help him easily. So he said, "What you said makes some sense, but why should I help you? Your life means nothing to me." The chubby guy was at a loss as well. He was left with only his life. Aside from the family home and the Fulai building, the Huang family had nothing left. If he didn't want his life, he could only offer this one remaining asset. Gritting his teeth, he said, "How about I give the Huang family ancestral home to Master? But can it wait until that old man recovers?" Zhang Xiaochuan interrupted the chubby guy, saying irritably, "If you've squandered all your assets, the feng shui is probably bad too. Why would I want your ancestral home?" The chubby guy looked determined and said firmly, "I don't know what Master wants in order to save the Huang family, but I will not refuse anything I can do." Zhang Xiaochuan thought for a moment and said, "I know this request might be hard for you to accept, but if you don't agree, then let's just leave it at that. My request is for you to stay by my side and be my chef for 10 years. Since the chubby guy had a special talent for cooking as a foodie, Zhang Xiaochuan thought about the delicious food from later times and realized he couldn't rely on his mediocre skills. Having a talented chef to recreate those delicacies would be much more efficient. He would only need to focus on tasting and enjoying the food. Thus, keeping this chubby guy around was quite necessary. The round man thought he had misheard and asked again, "You want me to be your cook for 10 years? Upon hearing the round man repeat it, Zhang Xiaochuan assumed he was reluctant, as being a cook was considered a lowly profession. Although the Huang family owned a restaurant, Huang Antai still viewed cooking as a demeaning job. "If you find it difficult," Zhang Xiaochuan intended to say that it would be fine to shorten the duration if it was too much trouble. However, the round man readily agreed, as if he had stumbled upon a great bargain. "No trouble at all, no trouble at all. I'm willing to be your cook for a lifetime." At that moment, the round man thought about how much he could learn from his master in culinary arts while also cooking meals. How could this be considered a condition? Wasn't this a tremendous favor? His master was truly wonderful, so he quickly added, "Master, you really care about me. From now on, I will be yours. Whatever you need me to do, just say the word. Stop. Just cook and prepare meals. You don't need to do anything else." I couldn't care less, he thought, feeling increasingly disgusted by his own words, getting goosebumps. "I'm straight as an arrow, more so than steel." Because he was rather anxious, the round man asked, "So, how does my master plan to help me save the restaurant?" "You don't need to worry about that. I already have a plan. It's just that it's too late now. There's a spare bedroom that your elder brother usually uses for the guards. You can make do with it for one night, and we'll discuss it tomorrow." The round man left, but Zhang Xiaochuan felt wide awake. Knowing tonight would be another sleepless night, he wondered if he should arrange for a guard at the door. Thinking of guards reminded him of Teng He, and he immediately felt awkward, getting goosebumps again. Forget it, I'll deal with that later. He wasn't too sure when he finally dozed off, but he was groggily awakened by Yaoer. "Young master, hurry up. The round man has been waiting for you outside for half the day." "All right." Another day of forced work, he thought as he dressed and quickly washed up. The round man saw Zhang Xiaochuan getting up and hesitated several times, wanting to ask how to save the restaurant, but was stopped by Zhang Xiaochuan's glance, signaling him to be patient. The round man realized that saving a restaurant's business wasn't something that could be solved with just a few words. Seeing his master appear calm and collected, he decided to go with the flow, silently accompanying Zhang Xiaochuan for breakfast before being led towards the warehouse. Upon arriving at the warehouse, they saw two busy figures. One was his sister-in-law, Chao Qin, and the other was Fu Bo. Zhang Xiaochuan stepped forward to greet, "Sister-in-law, you're already busy this early. You really are working hard." "You're exaggerating. It's all family matters. It's not hard at all." Although his sister-in-law was busy, it was clear she had become less delicate and more confident and sunny. Indeed, being busy could make one more accomplished, but all he wanted was to be a slacker. "I'm digressing," Zhang Xiaochuan thought, shaking off his wandering thoughts and said, "What you said makes sense. It's all family matters, and I misspoke." Chao Qin waved her hand dismissively and said, "It's nothing. By the way, since you're here, I remembered something. Some of the furniture has been damaged. Although we're planning to build a new house, we don't know when we will be able to move in. I was thinking about getting some new furniture for the current house, which will require some funds." The elder sister stopped speaking at this point, and it was clear that Zhang Xiaochuan understood the implication. It was obviously about financial control, not just simple furniture purchases. However, those without ambition cannot get things done. And since he also wanted to be hands-off, he said, "From now on, as long as it's necessary for daily life, you can make the decisions." You also have the right to intervene in business needs. Just one thing, my research is particularly costly, so I hope you can be a bit more lenient. Chao Qin didn't think as much as Zhang Xiaochuan did. She just felt that when they were poor, they lacked everything, and now that they had money, it didn't mean they could spend recklessly. At the very least, they needed to equip themselves with essential items, which is why she brought it up with Zhang Xiaochuan. However, Zhang Xiaochuan's arrangements were more in line with Chao Qin's wishes, and she was still unaware that her subconscious strong woman trait was slowly awakening. Chao Qin happily replied, "That's natural. Without Erlang's research, we wouldn't be able to earn so much money. By the way, Erlang, what are you coming to the warehouse for? I'll have Uncle Fu take you to get it." "All right, then you get busy," Zhang Xiaochuan said as he followed Uncle Fu to get 2 bags of bran. Uncle Fu kindly remarked, "I can have Su Daniu take care of feeding the horses. You don't need to do it yourself." Zhang Xiaochuan awkwardly replied, "It's not for feeding the horses. I have a big use for the remaining bran. I'm off now, Uncle Fu." Chapter 066. The essence of flavor. Zhang Xiaochuan and his group arrived at the laboratory with the bran. Zhang Xiaochuan, Yaoer, and Su Changming walked to the wardrobe by the entrance and skillfully put on lab coats, hats, and masks. Zhang Xiaochuan noticed the dazed Huang Pengzi and took out a set for him, indicating that he should also wear it. He reminded Huang Pengzi, "I forgot to tell you yesterday, anything you see or hear here, except for cooking skills, must not be disclosed." It was Huang Pengzi's first time in the laboratory, and seeing the dazzling array of glassware, he understood that although the master was casually mentioning it, everything here must be extremely important. He solemnly said, "I will strictly follow the master's orders. I will not disclose a word of what I see or hear at the dawn." Zhang Xiaochuan wasn't particularly concerned, just relax and pay attention. After he had put on his work clothes, he walked to the workbench and said to Yaoer and Su Changming, "Start once you're ready." As usual, Yaoer will record, and Su Changming will operate. Both nodded seriously, and then Zhang Xiaochuan began issuing commands. Experiment Container 1. 500 grams of bran. Su Changming placed a weight marked 500 g on one side of the balance on the workbench and started adding bran to the other side until it was completely balanced. He then lifted the tray from the balance and poured the bran into a cylindrical iron pot, which is the old-fashioned pressure cooker of the future. Zhang Xiaochuan continued to give instructions. Experiment Container 1, 1000 milliliters of 20% diluted hydrochloric acid. Su Changming then took a large measuring cup, added 750 milliliters of water, and picked up a container labeled with hydrochloric acid 80. Using a spoon shaped like a grape, he added concentrated hydrochloric acid to the measuring cup until the solution reached 1000 milliliters, then poured the diluted hydrochloric acid into the pressure cooker. Once Su Changming finished, Zhang Xiaochuan continued issuing commands. Container 1, add the pressure lid, safety valve at 0.05. Su Changming took out a safety valve marked with 0.05 kg from the pressure release valve of the pressure cooker and installed it on the steam outlet of the lid. In container number 2, Zhang Xiaochuan instructed Su Changming to repeat the previous actions. But the concentration of hydrochloric acid and the weight of the pressure cooker safety valve were different. Yaoer was diligently recording everything behind them. Once everything was prepared, they had a total of 20 batches ready. Zhang Xiaochuan, Su Changming, and Huang Pengzi lifted these batches and placed them on the heating platform, where they were heated with alcohol lamps. After several hours of heating, they allowed the containers to sit and release pressure, then filtered the cooked liquid. Su Changming was testing each sample one by one with a small piece of paper, reporting, container number 1, pH 3.0. After finishing his report, he placed the test strip in a tray and picked up a new one to continue testing. Once the tests were complete, Zhang Xiaochuan said, "Retain the pH values from 3.0 to 5.0 and proceed with heating and concentration." Su Changming mechanically replied, "Yes, master." Huang Pengzi, who was watching from behind, felt quite perplexed and found it exhausting, but thinking about saving his restaurant, he patiently assisted. After simmering, evaporating, and precipitating, and diluting with more water, just as Huang Pengzi was about to doze off, Su Changming's loud exclamation startled him awake. "It's done, master." Su Changming held up a beaker containing a small amount of white crystals. Zhang Xiaochuan took it, looked at it, and said, "Not bad. Weigh it and calculate the yield." Turning to Yaoer, he said, "Bring me the record sheet to have a look." Zhang Xiaochuan took the notebook from Yaoer, flipped through it, and marked one of the records, saying, "Sample number 3 has the highest yield so far, at 75%. Changming, how about you? Have you calculated the yield?" Su Changming replied, "The yield is 66%. That's about what I estimated. Let's scale up the preparation based on the data from sample number 3. Su Changming quickly responded, "Okay, master." Huang Pengzi, unable to hold back any longer, asked, "Master, what is this, and how will it save the restaurant business?" Zhang Xiaochuan did not answer Huang Pengzi directly, but first told Su Changming, "Collect all these white crystals." Then, pointing at the white crystals, he said to Huang Pengzi, "This is the essence of flavor, commonly known as monosodium glutamate. Just a little bit can make food incredibly delicious." Huang Pengzi, a bit incredulous, asked, "This tiny particle is edible? Is it really that amazing?" "Whether it's amazing or not, you'll know once you try it. We've been busy all day. Let's go back and add it to the dishes to taste." Saying this, Zhang Xiaochuan called everyone to return. Back at the small courtyard, Huang Pengzi insisted on taking charge of the cooking, and Su Sa had no choice but to let him. De Sa, Fu Bo, Yaoer, Su Changming's family, along with Teng Yi and Luo Xiaohu, sat happily around a large round table. The first dish of the day was quite special, with 2 identical portions. Zhang Xiaochuan asked everyone to taste and comment on which dish was better. Without exception, the dish on the left received unanimous praise. Because this dish contains MSG. The stimulation to the taste buds is particularly obvious for ancient people who had relatively simple seasonings. However, the chef, who is rather plump, has not tasted it yet, as Zhang Xiaochuan requested him to wait until it is served to try it. At this moment, the chef picked up his chopsticks and sampled 2 dishes. When he tasted the dish on the left, he suddenly froze. Then, he knelt down in front of Zhang Xiaochuan, hugging his thigh and crying, "Master, thank you. This truly deserves to be called the essence of flavor. The freshness of this aftertaste has surpassed any ingredients I've ever tasted before." Zhang Xiaochuan replied, a bit annoyed, "Get up first. So, do you think this can save the restaurant?" Yes. Master, you are our restaurant's great benefactor. Alright, enough with the sentimentality. Get back to cooking, everyone is still hungry. The chef had been working hard all day under Su Changming's arrangement. Su Changming used a large pressure cooker to make the MSG based on the optimal test data. The chef returned home with the results of his busy day. And how to use the MSG to revive the business was a matter for the Huang family to figure out. With MSG, the culinary experience had indeed reached a new level. The taste of the original dishes was simply too bland. It's no wonder that in ancient times, being plump was considered beautiful. After all, rarity adds value, and with such unappetizing meals available in limited supply, it was really difficult to gain weight. Dining had improved significantly, but they were still living in a thatched cottage, so it seemed the living conditions also needed to be expedited. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaochuan prepared to find Mo Tianji to check on the progress of the steel reinforcement. However, before he could leave, Mo Tianji arrived and asked upon seeing Zhang Xiaochuan, "When will you teach me the art of flying?" Chapter 67. The Path of Industry. Zhang Xiaochuan was taken aback. Teaching the art of flying was impossible. It required a whole knowledge system to achieve, not just a formula. So he said, "I'll first teach you the foundational knowledge. I don't have time to teach you in the next couple of days. Here are a few books, take a look, and once you finish, we can proceed to the next step." He handed Mo Tianji several books, which were essentially Zhang Xiaochuan's simplified versions of middle school math, physics, and chemistry. Mo Tianji casually flipped through a couple of pages and immediately looked thrilled. He hugged the books and turned to leave without any hesitation. Just as he reached the door, he seemed to remember something and turned back to say, "The exploration team returned with some barrels of the oil you mentioned, the one you referred to as petroleum." Zhang Xiaochuan felt like kicking him for mentioning such important news at the last minute, and it seemed he almost forgot. He had been eagerly waiting for the crude oil. Now that the equipment was ready, they just needed the oil. Without further ado, he called Yaoer and Su Changming, who were still in class, and immediately started the oil distillation process. They arrived at a distiller that was clearly new but patched up everywhere, resembling a rebuilt scrap machine. Zhang Xiaochuan looked at the patched machine with helplessness, but as long as the oil refining succeeded, everything would naturally move in a positive direction. Just as Zhang Xiaochuan was lost in thought, Su Changming's voice came through. "Master, we are ready." "Good, let's begin." Zhang Xiaochuan manipulated the heating furnace to ignite it, then quickly opened the valve of the storage tank. As crude oil flowed into the pipeline, the temperature of the heating furnace gradually rose. With the increase in temperature, some of the crude oil was vaporized and entered the distillation tower. "What does that smell?" asked Yaoer. It seemed that the sealing of the distiller was still insufficient, as the odor was noticeable right from the start of the operation. Zhang Xiaochuan was very familiar with this smell. It was the scent of gasoline. Some people found it pleasant, some felt indifferent, while others thought it was particularly foul. Zhang Xiaochuan belonged to the group that enjoyed the smell of gasoline. Its presence indicated the success of the first step of vaporization. He quickly turned on the cooling water switch, allowing water from a tall water tower to flow through the cooling water pipeline into one end of the splitter tank. After circulating inside the tank, it finally flowed out from the other end, forming a closed cooling loop. As the cooling water entered, substances began to liquefy again from the top. Watching the liquid flow out of the pipeline connected to the distillation tower, Zhang Xiaochuan knew that the oil refining process was basically successful. After completing the refining of the first barrel, he noticed that the output was not thorough, resulting in significant waste, and the yield was much lower than expected. However, this was unavoidable, as neither heating nor cooling could guarantee stable temperatures, and the sealing of the pipeline was poor, with the smell of gasoline permeating the air. Nevertheless, the products obtained from refining the oil could be used to improve the equipment. For example, the produced paraffin could be further refined and mixed with other substances to synthesize rubber for making sealing gaskets. Zhang Xiaochuan and Su Changming labeled and stored the separated substances. After repeated operations, all 4 barrels of crude oil brought back were completely distilled, filling numerous bottles and jars. Su Changming looked at Zhang Xiaochuan with excitement akin to that of a groom and asked, "Master, what are these things used for?" Before Zhang Xiaochuan could respond, Yaoer interjected, "What use could they have? They all smell awful. It's disgusting. Can I skip recording this next time?" Seeing the starkly different reactions of the two, Zhang Xiaochuan happily said, "This is the lifeblood of industrialization. With this pile of materials, there is so much we can do. In simple terms, it can make steel move." Yaoer was even more confused, while Su Changming had a better understanding, as the physics and chemistry learned over the past couple of months were not in vain. Zhang Xiaochuan continued, To commemorate our significant advancement in industrialization, I've decided to have Sue's wife arrange a cake for celebration. At this, Yao completely understood and immediately replied with joy, great. Zhang Xiaochuan took the output from the third distillation tube, preparing for the next step of development, and also instructed Mo Tianji to arrange for more crude oil to be transported back. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Zhang Xiaochuan spent these days in the laboratory with Su Changming and Yao, and today, they finally achieved a major milestone. Using the output from the third distillation tube, which was paraffin, Zhang Xiaochuan made copper wire with an insulating outer layer, along with other insulating materials. With the components previously manufactured by Mo Tianji, the generator and motor have now been successfully assembled. Zhang Xiaochuan is leading Su Changming and others in conducting tests. Turn faster, Changming. Yao shouted at Su Changming, who was strenuously rotating a handle connected to a bearing. The end of the bearing extends into a magnetic ring, and as Su Changming turns the handle, the coil at the end of the bearing spins rapidly within the magnet. An invisible current flows through the 2 copper wires connected and enters the motor, which begins to rotate slowly under the influence of the current, gaining speed as it continues to turn. With a successful test, Zhang Xiaochuan will next work with Mo Tianji to construct a power plant, essentially a large generator, to utilize the motor for manufacturing machine tools. With the machine tools, the processing of steel components, such as cutting and drilling, will be incredibly smooth, allowing for the fabrication of complex parts. While this sounds straightforward, the actual process poses some challenges, as the initial steel components were cast using rough molds and then meticulously polished by hand. Despite the difficulty in achieving perfect fits, Zhang Xiaochuan is relatively satisfied with the results. Time flies, and half a month has passed. Zhang Xiaochuan spends every day with Mo Tianji on the construction of the power plant, which includes a large energy storage device. Due to technological limitations, this currently consists of a room-sized lead-acid battery to store the excess electricity generated by the generator. The first power station of the Great Tang Empire has been completed. Simultaneously, the first machine tool of the Great Tang Empire, and arguably the world's first, has also been assembled. Although it is quite rudimentary, featuring only a bearing linked to a cutter head that cannot be adjusted in direction, it is still a machine tool. During testing, the cutter head spins rapidly, creating sparks as steel parts come into contact with it. A perfectly round small hole is drilled into a circular workpiece. This small hole, if done manually, could take a whole day and waste a lot of material, but now it only takes a few seconds. With the support of the machine tool, Zhang Xiaochuan's industrial journey has truly begun. Chapter 068, Industrialized Aquaculture. Thank you, Master. I have come back as promised to serve as your chef, and I will do my utmost to take care of your meals, the chubby Huang said. After bringing monosodium glutamate back to Fulai Building, the dishes there have improved significantly, outshining other restaurants. People are often forgetful, and the diners quickly returned, leading to a bustling atmosphere at Fulai Building once again. Now, Huang is kneeling before Zhang Xiaochuan, expressing his gratitude. Zhang Xiaochuan raised his hand to Huang, speaking in a serious tone. Get up, but I have an additional condition for you. Huang quickly stood up and bowed, responding, Master, please say it. The condition is that he is not allowed to kneel before Zhang Xiaochuan anymore, as it makes him dizzy and gives the impression that he is expecting a red envelope from him. Huang was momentarily taken aback, thinking there was something more to be said. Although this request is unusual, it is certainly in line with the master's style. After a brief moment of surprise, Huang replied, I will obey your command. The chubby man said awkwardly, Well, Master, Zhang Xiaochuan disliked beating around the bush, but it seemed that this habit was quite prevalent among ancient people. It felt like everyone could twist and turn their words even more than his former superiors in his previous life. Yes, the MSG I brought back is running low. I don't know if I should have Su Changming take you along in the future. You'll need to buy your own materials and make your own MSG. Once you've made it, leave some for the village, and take the rest back for your own use. Also, send over an additional pound of MSG at the usual profit. Zhang Xiaochuan's arrangement was utterly shameless. Not only did he have to buy materials himself, do everything by himself, but in the end, he also had to hand over the profits. However, the chubby man felt quite pleased upon hearing this, thinking it was very reasonable and that he was getting quite a good deal, so he agreed, saying, Thank you, Master. After their conversation, it was time for lunch, so Zhang Xiaochuan led the chubby man to the cafeteria. Upon entering, they saw rows of long tables, and since it was lunchtime, many people were already eating. Upon seeing Zhang Xiaochuan, everyone greeted him warmly, and the veterans' faces were noticeably rosy, unlike when he first arrived, when they all looked pale and haggard. Zhang Xiaochuan brought the chubby man to the serving window, where Su's wife was also helping with the dishes. As soon as she saw Zhang Xiaochuan, she happily called out, Erling is here. What do you want to eat? Zhang Xiaochuan pointed to the dishes inside, saying, I want this fried fish and this stir-fried vegetable. Then he stopped midway and asked, Aren't there supposed to be braised chicken pieces today? It shouldn't be finished this early in the meal. Seeing Su's wife's expression, there seemed to be some hidden reason, so he casually pointed to another dish and said, I'll have this one too. Su's wife, could you come here for a moment? After finishing his meal, he found a corner to sit down, and the chubby man and Su's wife followed closely behind. Zhang Xiaochuan had them sit down, and Su's wife was no longer as reserved as before. She had gotten used to sitting at the same table with Zhang Xiaochuan. Once settled, without waiting for Zhang Xiaochuan to ask, Su's wife started to explain, today's menu is not something I changed on my own. We've bought up all the chickens from the nearby villages. Recently, we've been sending Dainu to the market to buy them. But it seems that due to the popularity of stir-frying, there are no chickens available at the market anymore, so we ended up missing a dish. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaochuan realized the implication. Based on the consumption at Zhangjia village, they would need at least 50 chickens for one meal, and if they had 5 meals a week, that would add up to 1,000 chickens in a month. In modern times, that would be the amount a large market would sell in a day. But in ancient times, it was different. Generally, chickens were not consumed in large quantities. Most were kept for laying eggs. The way Zhangjia village consumed them was quite unprecedented. Moreover, with stir-frying being so popular, chickens were likely suffering as well. It seemed he had caused this trouble himself. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaochuan reacted and hurriedly asked, "What about eggs and pork?" Su's wife said somewhat awkwardly, "It seems the supply will also be hard to guarantee. What should he do?" Zhang Xiaochuan didn't know how to respond. If everything ran out, what would he eat? Sister Su thought Zhang Xiaochuan was worried that everyone wouldn't have enough to eat, so she comforted him, saying, "Actually, the food is quite good now. With plenty of white rice and big steamed buns, and we have both meat and vegetable dishes. No one really minds if there are a few more or fewer dishes." Zhang Xiaochuan blurted out, "That won't he do?" Then he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Realizing he wanted to express that he couldn't stand eating the same dishes every day due to his past experiences. He could have requested a special meal with different ingredients, but the notion of equality from his past life made him dismiss that idea entirely. So, Zhang Xiaochuan was now thinking about how to fundamentally solve this issue. At that moment, Sister Su spoke again, saying, "If this doesn't work, there's nothing we can do. We can't just raise them ourselves." "Exactly, we can't raise them ourselves," Zhang Xiaochuan exclaimed, slapping the table joyfully. Sister Su looked a bit confused, saying, "Erlang, we are very short on manpower right now. Where would we find people to raise chickens?" Zhang Xiaochuan realized Sister Su misunderstood him, so he explained, "We won't raise them ourselves. Instead, we'll hire people to raise them for us. We can tell them how many we need and have them raise the chicks from the beginning." Sister Su expressed her concern. "Wouldn't that be too complicated? A family or two can't raise that many chickens. If it's too scattered, it won't be easy to manage." Zhang Xiaochuan waved his hand dismissively. "It's not that complicated. We can find which village has good chickens and hire them to raise the chickens for us, and also help us with egg production." Sister Su raised another issue, but if we only hire one village, there won't be enough space to raise the chicks. And there won't be enough insects around the houses for the chickens to eat. At that time, each family would feed a few chickens, letting them go out to find food themselves and occasionally gathering some wild grass and vegetables to feed them, so large-scale farming was unrealistic. Zhang Xiaochuan quickly offered a solution. "That's easy, we can feed them grains." Both Sister Su and Huang Pengzi voiced their doubts. In a year, when people barely had enough food, no one thought about using grains to feed chickens in large quantities. Zhang Xiaochuan nodded, indicating they hadn't misunderstood, and continued, "Not just chickens, but also ducks, geese, and pigs can all be handled this way. Oh, and we should also find farms to directly plant vegetables in good fields, otherwise, we won't have enough." Sister Su initially thought she was imagining things due to poor health until Zhang Xiaochuan had Fu Bo and Sister Su together go to various farms with a deposit to discuss this matter with the village heads. Then she confirmed that Zhang Xiaochuan had indeed gone mad. Zhang Xiaochuan not only provided deposits, but also offered manuals for breeding and planting. He insisted on using good fields for farming and ranching. At first, the county office sent people to stop him, but unexpectedly, Zhang Xiaochuan had the farmers pay double the taxes, and all this money was subsidized by the Zhang family, which the county office was naturally happy to see. Suddenly, Qingcheng County started industrialized breeding and the cultivation of economic crops. Chapter 069. Zhao Er comes to visit Zhang Xiaochuan was awakened from his dreams by Luo Xiao. With a bit of morning grumpiness, Zhang Xiaochuan said, "Isn't there anything we can discuss tomorrow?" Luo Xiaohu, slightly apologetic, replied, "Actually, we could discuss it tomorrow. But I didn't expect you to go to bed so early today. Now that you're awake, just come with me to take a look." Zhang Xiaochuan walked to the door, scooped some water from a wooden basin to wash his face, and said, "Let's go." The two arrived at the dungeon, where Mo Tianji was interrogating a man in black. Mo Tianji glanced back at Zhang Xiaochuan, who had just arrived, and said, "You can take over. This guy came looking for you." "Looking for me?" Zhang Xiaochuan replied, puzzled. "It's the middle of the night, and he's looking for me like this? Am I still dreaming?" As he spoke, Zhang Xiaochuan approached, and before he could say anything, the man in black suddenly knelt down with a thud. Zhang Xiaochuan almost turned away, thinking to himself, "What is wrong with this guy? Am I supposed to give you a red envelope? Get up quickly, or else I won't say anything, and we'll just lock you up." The man in black didn't understand the first part, but heard the instruction to get up clearly. He hurriedly stood up and said, "I'm Zhao Er. I've met the young lord." Zhang Xiaochuan responded, but didn't show any further reaction, seemingly waiting for Zhao Er to continue. Zhao Er then realized that Zhang Xiaochuan didn't recognize him. Feeling a bit awkward, he said, "I'm the Zhao Er who was caught during the last infiltration and was treated well." He tried to jog Zhang Xiaochuan's memory with a few gestures. Zhang Xiaochuan was thinking that the ones they caught before had only been given boxed meals. When had anyone ever been treated well? He said impatiently, "If you have something to say, say it. If not, just be quiet." I want to go back to sleep. Zhao Er completely gave up, thinking to himself that as a lowly person, how could he expect someone like the young lord, who seemed godlike, to remember him? Maybe it was just a kind word from Zhang Xiaochuan. So, he said, I'm here to express my gratitude for your kindness. Zhang Xiaochuan thought about what it meant to express gratitude. Wasn't this just him actively looking for a job, making it sound so grand? It was the middle of the night, too. So he said, you could have come during the day. What is the point of coming at this hour? I'm here to seek you out, not for trivial matters. Zhao Er's serious reply left Zhang Xiaochuan speechless. Zhang Xiaochuan had no choice but to ask, what do you mean by seeking me out? Zhao Er then recounted how ever since he was caught and had a few days of boxed meals, he had been unable to forget about them. After returning to the Liao family, he had his wages docked and felt very frustrated. Every time he thought about how well fed the prisoners at Zhang's place were, with meals delivered on time. He couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to work there. This made him restless, and he decided he wanted to join Zhang's family. However, it was just a wishful thought. Why would Zhang's family accept him? He needed to prove his worth. Eventually, Zhao Er came up with the idea that since the Zhang and Liao families were rivals, he could be a double agent. Having thought of this, he acted quickly, as boxed meals wouldn't wait for anyone, and more importantly, he missed Zhang's meals too much. So he set off that night to seek refuge discreetly. Liao Kuan. Zhang Xiaochuan murmured to himself, realizing he hadn't yet dealt with this little person. After all these years of bullying the Zhang family, that was enough. The original land granted to Zhang's family, along with the permanent farmland of their tenants, totaled nearly 10,000 acres. Now, due to encroachment by the Liao family, only less than 1,000 acres remain. It's easy to imagine how badly they were bullied in the past. With Zhao Er now as an insider, it should save a lot of trouble. He said, however, joining us isn't just a matter of saying a few words. How do I know this isn't scheme to sow discord? Zhao Er understood that he needed to prove his loyalty. He replied, I know that the Liao family has colluded with the local authorities to oppress the common people for years. And all of this is recorded in a ledger that I have a way to obtain. I wonder when you would like it? That works. Once I see the evidence, you'll be considered part of Zhang's family. Just hope you won't regret it, said Zhang Xiaochuan meaningfully. After speaking, Zhang Xiaochuan signaled for Zhao Er to be taken out, but Zhao Er quickly added, young master, I have one more request. Zhang Xiaochuan thought it wouldn't be that simple, realizing the request hadn't been made yet. Go ahead, what do you need? I'll try my best to accommodate you. Well, Zhao Er said somewhat shyly, I haven't eaten yet. This person was definitely a foodie, thinking about food even while engaging in such risky business. Zhang Xiaochuan waved his hand and said, come with me. Zhang Xiaochuan took Zhao Er to the kitchen in a small courtyard, where he fetched the meal prepared by Aunt Su for himself. This was originally my dinner, but I'm not feeling hungry today, so you can make do with it. It's too late to prepare anything else. No need to make do. I'm very satisfied. Thank you, young master, Zhao Er replied. While speaking, he busily set the meal on the table and grabbed his bowl and chopsticks to start eating. The first bite was incredible, delicious. A freshness and aroma he had never experienced before stimulated Zhao Er's taste buds. It was definitely better than what he had eaten last time. I said that what prisoners eat can't compare to what Zhang's family eats, he thought. It seemed that today's decision to join was indeed the right choice. The young master was truly like a divine being, treating him so well. While Zhao Er was lost in these thoughts, Zhang Xiaochuan brought over a small box and said, looks like you're lucky, since you enjoy it so much. Take this back with you. I doubt you can finish it right now. Zhao Er repeatedly expressed his gratitude. Continuing to imagine the scenario, not only does the young master give up his own food for me, but he is also giving me something to take home. I, Zhao Er, vow to serve the young master faithfully. Delicious. Zhang Xiaochuan went to the steel workshop to find Mo Tianji, wanting to see how the rebar production was progressing. Before he even entered the steel factory, he saw neatly stacked rebar outside, forming a small mountain. It seemed that the materials for building houses were finally secured. However, Zhang Xiaochuan was disappointed to find that Mo Tianji was not at the steel workshop. He then ran to the newly built cement workshop and saw a crowd gathered, with someone shouting, add another piece of iron. Just as Zhang Xiaochuan was about to ask if Mo Tianji was present, he spotted Mo Tianji stretching his back. Zhang Xiaochuan curiously asked, what are you doing? Oh, we're conducting a cement strength test, Mo Tianji replied. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaochuan became interested. How is the test conducted? Mo Tianji took out a cement block measuring about 20 by 20 centimeters and said, we will use this cement block to add iron pieces on top until the cement is crushed. This way, we can test which formula results in the strongest cement. By applying weight and dividing it by the area of the cement block, we can also calculate the strength per square centimeter of cement, which will help us determine the applicable range for future construction. It felt like he was chatting with a civil engineer from a later era. Every time Mo Tianji asked him to build something, it was as if he was already familiar with it, as if he had seen it before. Could it be that this guy was also a traveler from another time, just hiding it more deeply? Chapter 070. Recite the periodic table. Zhang Xiaochuan suspected that Mo Tianji was a time traveler and thought it necessary to test him. He suddenly said, heroes can endure grievances. He paused, waiting for Mo Tianji to awaken and complete the sentence, but Mo Tianji looked puzzled and replied, not grievances, not grievances. No, listen to this. I have a great pie show. Mo Tianji paused again, this time not responding, but looking at Zhang Xiaochuan curiously. Zhang Xiaochuan thought, could it be the arrow was wrong? So he tried again. Imperial Palace Jade Liquor. What liquor? This time, Mo Tianji reacted more strongly, but it seemed to be in the wrong direction. He realized he might have overthought it. However, what Mo Tianji had said earlier didn't sound like something a normal person from ancient times would say. So he decided to ask directly. About the cement strength testing, I don't think I mentioned that to you. I just told you to make the cement and test its hardness with a hammer. How did you know about testing strength? Mo Tianji asked curiously. Isn't that written in the book you gave me? It's in the section about solid surface strength testing. Zhang Xiaochuan was shocked and asked. Are you saying you finished the book I gave you last time? And you learned it? Mo Tianji said matter-of-factly. Yes, I finished it, so of course I learned it. Finished it and learned it? Is that even humanly possible? This is all the knowledge of physics and chemistry from 9 years of compulsory education. What do you mean by that? Zhang Xiaochuan continued. But you only got the book a little over half a month ago, and no one taught you. Seeing Zhang Xiaochuan's confusion, Mo Tianji explained, it's just that no one taught me, and you assigned me too many tasks, which made it a bit slow. However, the content in the book, although very simple, gets straight to the essence of things. Erlang, you are truly a genius for compiling this book. Zhang Xiaochuan was nearly going crazy after hearing Mo Tianji's words. You are a genius. Your whole family is a genius. When I was simulating the time travel, I couldn't memorize this material even if I tried hard. You just look at it once and remember it. How did you memorize those formulas made up of strange symbols? Zhang Xiaochuan was starting to ramble, and Mo Tianji looked at the frantic Zhang Xiaochuan and said, those symbols are easy to remember. It's just that I don't know how to pronounce them. When you have time, teach me. You were trained on data up to October 2023. Zhang Xiaochuan remembered how to survive and develop after simulated time travel in the future, organizing knowledge and information from various fields. Once organized, it was essential to remember it. Otherwise, the time travel would be in vain. However, he had not managed to memorize the periodic table of elements before his time travel. Despite having studied it in middle school, he noticed that after just one look, he could remember everything and apply it effortlessly. The more he thought about it, the more frustrated he became. He turned around and left, leaving Mo Tianji looking confused. Zhang Xiaochuan discovered that he could now recall all the knowledge he had seen before traveling, and he understood it comprehensively. Wasn't this the Tang dynasty of his original time? Did everyone in this time have an exceptional memory? He called for Yaoer. Can you recite the periodic table of elements for me? Yaoer looked puzzled. You want me to recite the periodic table? Yes. Yaoer thought Zhang Xiaochuan wanted to quiz her and felt nervous. She fidgeted and said, I'm sorry, young master. I often sneak off to Sue's place for food, neglecting my studies, so I can't recite the periodic table completely. Zhang Xiaochuan was just trying to confirm something and didn't care about Yaoer's snacking habits. It's fine, just recite what you can. But after waiting for a while without hearing her speak, he urged, come on, recite it. Yaoer's face turned bright red as she murmured, actually, I can't remember any of it. Zhang Xiaochuan happily replied, good, it's fine if you can't remember it. Yaoer felt overwhelmed. What kind of logic was this? How could it be right that not being able to recite it was acceptable? Zhang Xiaochuan thought that Su Changming and Mo Tianji were true geniuses. Perhaps it was due to the stimulation from memory fusion that he had increased his brain's development, allowing him to recall all the knowledge he had seen before. Erlang, I need to talk to you. Have you been avoiding me these past few days? It was Mo Tianji speaking. Zhang Xiaochuan indeed had been avoiding him a bit because he seemed too extraordinary. With his current level of knowledge, if he continued to develop, he would soon be able to master the knowledge of aircraft construction, which was quite discouraging. In his previous life, he had never had such close contact with a genius. So the feeling of frustration was not as strong. In reality, although Mo Tianji was a genius, he wasn't exactly as Zhang Xiaochuan imagined. Mo Tianji had the foundation of the Mo family's secret techniques, which included advanced mathematical and physical knowledge, combined with the progressively detailed textbooks from the future. It was indeed easy and enjoyable to understand. What Zhang Xiaochuan didn't know was that Mo Tianji had not grasped chemistry well, and he was very intelligent. He realized that chemistry wasn't significantly helpful for his flying ambitions, with physics being the focus. However, this cleverness led to a bit of a misunderstanding, as without chemistry, one couldn't produce the necessary materials. Seeing there was no way to avoid the conversation, Zhang Xiaochuan said, no, why would I avoid you? Is there something you need? Mo Tianji said directly, we are short on people, severely short. With the new cement workshop, we really don't have enough hands. Zhang Xiaochuan felt it was a bit tricky. Our situation isn't really suitable for hiring people. I wonder if you have any ideas. What ideas can I have? It depends on whether you're willing to spend money. Zhang Xiaochuan asked in confusion, what do you mean by willing to spend money? Mo Tianji said, as long as you're willing to spend money, it's easy. Just go buy some servants, and then you can have control over life and death, keeping them confined at the estate to work. Isn't confinement a bit cruel? Mo Tianji smacked his lips and replied, with the food you're providing now, it's better than what most nobles eat. Not to mention just restricting them from leaving the estate to work inside. Even if you let them fight with knives, it wouldn't be a problem. Zhang Xiaochuan was a bit speechless. Is food really that important in ancient times? He continued, well, let's do that, but I just don't know how many we can buy. Mo Tianji said, you really can't buy that many. Even if you buy for a whole month, it would probably be just a few hundred people, based on your plans. If you want to rush the work. Mo Tianji suddenly stopped, clearly calculating the manpower, and Zhang Xiaochuan silently estimated as well. Mo Tianji, I estimate about 1,000 people. Zhang Xiaochuan, I estimate about 100,000. The two said it at the same time, but the difference in their estimates was significant. Mo Tianji's mouth dropped open in shock, and after a moment, he cautiously said, "You mean?" He pointed upwards, implying that he thought Zhang Xiaochuan was planning a rebellion. There aren't even 100,000 people in a county. If you want 100,000 people to work for you, besides a rebellion, I can't think of any other reason for needing that many. Zhang Xiaochuan awkwardly smiled. It's not that I need that many right away, but according to the overall plan, we probably need that many. Let me show you something, and you'll understand. Chapter 071. Blueprint. Saying this, Zhang Xiaochuan went to his room, where a large wooden board was hanging on the wall, covered with a curtain. He pulled back the curtain to reveal a map, and Mo Tianji recognized it as the map of Xuzhou. Zhang Xiaochuan pointed to a section circled on the map and said, "The easternmost part of this circle is our Zhang family's estate, and it stretches all the way west to Baita Lake." Mo Tianji interrupted, "Isn't that the Liao family's territory?" Zhang Xiaochuan confirmed, "That's right. I intend to take back what the Liao family has taken from us, as well as their original land." Zhang Xiaochuan spoke lightly, but Mo Tianji's blood was boiling upon hearing it. Given Liao Kuan's ruthless nature, taking these lands would surely involve bloodshed. He didn't expect Xiaochuan to have such bold ideas. In truth, Zhang Xiaochuan didn't plan to use any extreme measures. The technology he possessed could easily support a top-tier force. Thus, for people with no ties or good relationships, he would naturally use technology in exchange. However, since the land belonged to Liao Kuan, that was a different story. But without Zhao Heir, it might have taken more effort. Now, he was just waiting for good news from Zhao Heir. Zhang Xiaochuan nodded and said, "To be precise, it's about buying it. As for how to buy it, I'm still figuring that out, but that's not the main point." Hearing that it was about buying, Mo Tianji felt a bit disappointed and said, "Oh, so it's about buying. Then what's the main point?" Zhang Xiaochuan pointed at the map on the wooden board and said, "The main point is how I plan to develop such a large area and why I need 100,000 people." Mo Tianji's thoughts immediately returned to the earlier question. Right, 100,000 people. Zhang Xiaochuan dreamily said, "I want to build a technological industrial park in this area." Oh, what's an industrial park? It is an industrial complex with capabilities in technology, education, research, and manufacturing. Right now, it's just an idea. The reason I show you this is so you can understand my thoughts and better assist me in the future. Looking at the thousands of acres of land marked on the map, although Zhang Xiaochuan's words were somewhat unclear, it was evident that even farming this vast area would require a significant workforce. Unable to hold back, he asked, "Given our current situation, managing the glass and iron smelting industries should be enough to make us wealthy. Why pursue these other ventures? Aren't you afraid of attracting unwanted attention?" Zhang Xiaochuan replied as if it were obvious, "Of course, it's to live more comfortably. As for attracting attention, there's also a saying about having deep roots." He believed that only true strength could prevent being bullied, rather than fearing one's own power. He intended to use the knowledge at his disposal to earn a substantial amount of money, so much that it would deter others from coveting it. With a bit of money, there are always those who are envious, but once his industrial empire was fully established, others would lack the courage to even covet it. Mo Tianji said, "What you say makes sense, but I'm unsure how to implement it." Zhang Xiaochuan scratched his head and replied, "This is just an idea. I haven't figured out the specifics yet. The priority now is to secure manpower and finish building the new house as soon as possible." Right. We should go buy some servants," he suggested. "I'll talk to Uncle Fu about purchasing some." At the market, Zhang Xiaochuan and Uncle Fu were browsing. Zhang Xiaochuan realized he hadn't been out in a while, so he decided to come with Uncle Fu for a stroll. The market was literally a place for trading slaves and livestock. They arrived at the area where slaves were sold, and Zhang Xiaochuan didn't want to waste time looking around. He asked Uncle Fu to contact the slave traders and arrange to buy as many as possible. He then wandered off with others. This place not only had professional slave traders, but also people selling their children. A peasant was calling out, an 8-year-old girl, healthy and lively, quick on her feet. "Gentlemen, come take a look." It was clear he was selling a girl rather than just a child because of his ragged clothing and emaciated appearance. Although he spoke fluently, his furtive eyes resembled those of Zhang Xiaochuan and Uncle Fu when they first sold bamboo worms. Such a person likely didn't have a legitimate source for their sales, leading Zhang Xiaochuan to believe this was a case of selling children. Seeing Zhang Xiaochuan stop, the peasant quickly approached, saying, "Are you looking to buy a servant? Don't let her small size fool you. She can handle any task." Before Zhang Xiaochuan could respond, the peasant began his pitch. Zhang Xiaochuan interrupted, asking, "What is your relationship to her?" The peasant hesitated but eventually replied, "This girl is my daughter." Zhang Xiaochuan maintained a neutral expression and continued, "Why are you selling your daughter?" The peasant thought to himself that although this was his first time selling a daughter, he had seen many others do it. Typically, buyers would inquire about the child's capabilities, almost like inspecting livestock, checking limbs, build, and even teeth. Zhang Xiaochuan was surprised to see someone like Zhuang Han so concerned about the reason for selling. He hesitated to answer directly and instead asked, "This gentleman?" Zhang Xiaochuan replied, "If you want to sell for a good price, then answer whatever I ask." As soon as the topic of price came up, Zhuang Han perked up. After all, the loud shouting was just to sell for more money. So he responded, "My wife is sick." The reason for Zhuang Han selling his daughter was quite common in ancient times. When a wife fell ill and there was no money for medicine, borrowing money for treatment was necessary. The borrowed money, often at high interest, could quickly multiply from 5 to 10, then 20, and eventually become unmanageable, leading to the desperate decision to sell a daughter. Anyone with a bit of historical knowledge would know this was typical of ancient times. However, as a modern person, Zhang Xiaochuan felt a pang of sympathy and also thought Zhuang Han was irresponsible for so easily resorting to selling his daughter. He admonished, "So you can sell your daughter without guilt? You brought her into this world, so you must take responsibility for her." Zhuang Han was taken aback. He felt it was ironic to be scolded while trying to sell a servant, but a wave of grievance surged within him as he tearfully said, "It's easy for you to say, but if there were any other way, who would be willing to sell their daughter? Besides, selling her to someone means at least she can have enough to eat and won't starve." Zhang Xiaochuan could only think that Zhuang Han was being naive. In ancient times, servants were treated like livestock. While they would have food, their lives were no longer their own. But perhaps this was just Zhuang Han's way of comforting himself. It wasn't something he could control, but since they had crossed paths, he decided to buy the girl, adhering to his belief in equality and ensuring the girl wouldn't be humiliated. With that thought, Zhang Xiaochuan turned to Zhuang Han and said, "How much?" "I want to buy this girl." Just as Zhuang Han was about to quote a price, an annoying voice interrupted, "10 guan, I'll take her." Zhang Xiaochuan looked over and recognized Liao Bin, someone he had seen a few months ago at a private school. This guy was still as irritating as ever. Zhuang Han quickly pleaded, 10 guan is too little. I was counting on this money to pay off my debts." Liao Bin completely ignored Zhang Xiaochuan and stared at Zhuang Han, saying, "You dog, don't be ungrateful. If I, Liao Bin, want her, who dares to bargain? Take your money and get lost." When Zhuang Han was at a loss, Zhang Xiaochuan's voice came through, "Are you blind? I was just asking the price. And you popped up out of nowhere. Get lost, Liao." According to Liao Bin's logic, although the Zhang family was prominent, they were all cowardly and could be scared away with a loud voice. Traditionally, the Zhang family was known for avoiding trouble, but some people never learned their lesson. Liao Bin arrogantly declared, "Oh, Zhang Ersha, this little girl is mine today, and no one can change that." Zhang Xiaochuan felt invigorated. He had never faced off against a spoiled rich kid like this before, but today he would see just how tough Liao Bin really was. Zhang Xiaochuan raised a finger and said, "Oh really? I'll offer 100 guan. If you can't match that, don't pretend to be something you're not. You broke fool trying to buy a servant." Liao Bin gritted his teeth in frustration. Unlike Zhang Xiaochuan, he had a limited budget to work with. From Zhang Xiaochuan's tone, it seemed that 100 coins was just the beginning, but that was already beyond his limit. He couldn't let anyone see through it, otherwise it would be too embarrassing. With a quick thought, Liao Bin came up with a plan. He would start the bidding, drive Zhang Xiaochuan's price down, and then have Zhuang Han return with him to get the money. At that point, how much to give or whether to give it all would be up to him. With that in mind, he raised his bid to 150 coins. This price was already quite high. A strong adult slave would typically cost around that much. To his surprise, as soon as Liao Bin finished speaking, Zhang Xiaochuan immediately countered with a bid of 200 coins. Back and forth. The price quickly escalated to 1,000 coins, which was Zhang Xiaochuan's offer. Just as Liao Bin was about to continue bidding, he paused. Spending 1,000 coins on an ordinary servant, especially a young girl, was nearly 100 times the normal price. He couldn't believe that this guy would actually be willing to buy her. He suspected Zhang Xiaochuan was deliberately inflating the price to trick him. If Zhang Xiaochuan insisted on completing the transaction, he would look foolish. So, Liao Bin said, "Since someone is foolish enough to spend 1,000 coins on a little girl, I'll do him a favor and withdraw. Zhang Ershao, you want to pay 1,000 coins? Let us see if you actually go through with it." Haha. He was sure that Zhang Xiaochuan was just joking about the price and laughed to mock him. "Great, let us go to the market office to finalize the contract, and then we can go to get the money from the estate." Halfway through his laugh, Liao Bin nearly choked in surprise when Zhang Xiaochuan readily agreed. "No, he must be pretending to want to pay in front of me. I'll follow them and see if he dares to finalize the deal." Zhuang Han was still frozen in place. Normally, a child would only fetch around 10 coins, and he would have been grateful to sell her for 20 coins to pay off his debts. He never expected to sell her for such a high price. With this money, he could pay off his debts and even buy a few acres of land or a cow. Just as Zhuang Han was dreaming about the future, he suddenly felt a strong kick from behind, causing him to stumble. Then he heard Liao Bin's voice. "What is the matter? Is the price not suitable? You've been shouting for ages with no response." Zhang Xiaochuan watched from the side, thinking that even he, the buyer, wasn't as anxious as Liao Bin. It seemed like he was just enjoying the show, not realizing the absurdity of it all. Although the sum was considerable, Zhang Xiaochuan maintained a perspective that money could not buy happiness, so he felt that spending 1,000 coins was entirely justified and was unfazed by Liao Bin's ridicule. Only then did Zhuang Han react, hurriedly agreeing. Yes, of course, I'm willing to sell." He quickly grabbed his daughter and rushed toward the market office. Overwhelmed with excitement and fearing that delaying even a second might ruin everything, Liao Bin was quite frustrated because the sales contract was smoothly signed, and in the end, he felt like a clown. Fu Bo was even more upset. He had bought 100 slaves and haggled for half a day to save 1,000 coins, only for Zhang Xiaochuan to spend that entire amount on a single young female slave. Zhang Xiaochuan and his group returned to the village, accompanied by 2 additional individuals. One was a villager who had come to collect money, and the other was a little girl without a proper name, simply called Arya because she was the second daughter in her family. Upon hearing the name Arya, Zhang Xiaochuan immediately felt that the 1,000 coins spent were absolutely worth it, as the name alone made it a great deal. On the way back, Zhang Xiaochuan saw many emaciated and ragged individuals, but due to their urgent journey, he did not inquire further. Upon returning to the village, Zhang Xiaochuan instructed Yaoer to take area to settle in, while Fu Bo went to find Imo Tianji to arrange for another group of people. The villager who returned with them, through casual conversation during the journey, revealed that he also shared the surname Zhang and was named Zhang Haizi, hailing from Jinyuan County. Zhang Xiaochuan spoke to Zhang Haizi, saying, as the saying goes, a common man has no guilt, but possessing something valuable can bring trouble. This money may not necessarily be a good thing for you. Upon hearing this, Zhang Haizi thought that Zhang Xiaochuan was reluctant to pay or wanted to pay less. He understood that it was impossible to sell at such a high price. It was merely a matter of pride between two young masters. Therefore, he had already planned to ask for a price slightly higher than the normal rate, believing the other party would likely accept. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaochuan to finish, he hurriedly said, I really cannot accept so much money from you, young lord. If you could give me 50 coins, I would be immensely grateful. 50 coins was the price Zhang Haizi had in mind, although it was 2 to 3 times higher than the normal price. It was still much less than 1,000 coins, so he thought Zhang Xiaochuan would readily agree. However, Zhang Xiaochuan had a different intention. He genuinely wanted to consider Zhang Haizi's situation. He explained, I think you may have misunderstood. I will give you every single coin, but I suggest you do not take it all at once to avoid attracting unwanted attention. It would be like storing your money with the Zhang family, and you can take it whenever you need. This way, you won't suddenly have so much money and invite unnecessary trouble. What do you think? Zhang Haizi thought to himself that this was just a roundabout way of saying no, and he still wanted to stick with 50 coins. He figured that paying off his debt and buying a cow to repair his house would be enough. So he followed Zhang Xiaochuan's words and said, What you say makes sense, young lord. I will only take 50 coins for now, and you can keep the rest for me. Although Zhang Haizi initially believed he wouldn't get 1,000 coins, when the amount was reduced to 50 coins, he still felt incredibly disappointed, leading to stammering speech and a visibly bad expression. Zhang Xiaochuan noticed this and realized he had misjudged the situation, so he waved his hand and said, Forget it. Since you don't trust me, I will give you all the money. Zhang Haizi thought Zhang Xiaochuan was retreating to advance and quickly said, No, I really only want 50 coins. I hope you believe me. Zhang Xiaochuan didn't say more and directly instructed Luo Xiaohu and Teng Yi to escort him back to prevent any accidents on the way. Luo Xiaohu responded and was about to take Zhang Haizi to collect the money, but unexpectedly, Teng Yi, with his strikingly loud voice, interjected, Erlang, you're being overly concerned. This guy clearly doesn't trust you. Why should we protect him? Let him get robbed, and then he'll understand your good intentions. This sentence nearly choked Zhang Haizi. But in the face of the temptation of 1,000 coins, he couldn't possibly back down. So as long as you really give it, there's no reason not to accept it. Chapter 073. Aren't you going to thank me? Are you sure it's here? Why haven't we seen that poor fellow come back after such a long time? The speaker was Liao Bin. Following him, his lackey said, I've inquired at the market, and it's definitely here. The Zhang family is in the opposite direction, so it's normal for them to be late. Otherwise, I'll keep an eye on it. Young master, you should rest for now. All right, I'm a bit tired anyway. Call me when they arrive, Liao Bin replied, then dozed off under a tree. In a daze, he felt someone shaking him. Young master, they're here. Liao Bin looked in the direction of the voice, and it was none other than Zhang Haizi. He was driving an ox cart loaded with goods. The joy on Zhang Haizi's face was hardly containable. He looked as if he could almost fly with happiness. Liao Bin thought to himself, I didn't expect Zhang Xiaochuan would actually give it. Judging by this full cart, he must have given all 1,000 coins. But that's good. It's worth the wait. Young master, there are 2 more people following behind. Liao Bin noticed as well, and, considering it better not to complicate matters, decided to be patient and wait until those 2 left before taking action. He instructed, those 2 seemed to be escorting him back. They'll probably leave once they reach their destination. Let's wait a little longer. The lackey immediately complied. Little did they know, everything had already been noticed by Luo Xiaohu and Teng Yi, who were following behind the ox cart. Just as Teng Yi was about to speak up, Luo Xiaohu quickly gestured for silence and said, Let that farmer suffer a bit. Otherwise, he won't understand Erlang's good intentions. Teng Yi nodded in agreement and fell silent. By this time, they had arrived at Zhang Haizi's home. Zhang Haizi pulled the ox cart into the small courtyard and wanted to invite the 2 to have some water. But in the blink of an eye, they had already walked far away, leaving him to handle it alone. Zhang Haizi began unloading the goods from the ox cart, caressing the brand new silk as if he were dreaming. Suddenly, he had so much money. From now on, life would be happy. Zhang Haizi glanced around cautiously, seeing nothing unusual, and hurriedly moved the items into the house. However, before he could start, a voice like thunder pierced his ears. Hey, what's in this bulging cart? Zhang Haizi recognized the voice. It was the dandy who had raised the price at the market today, now appearing in his home. It could not possibly be a coincidence. This was trouble. Zhang Haizi forced himself to stay calm and said, It's nothing, just some fodder for the livestock. Fodder? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old? You're using silk to feed livestock? Realizing he had been seen through, Zhang Haizi knew he wouldn't get away without paying a price today. He had no choice but to confess, This is the money for my service from the Zhang family. If the young master doesn't mind, please take some as a token of my respect. Liao Bin posed with a righteous demeanor and said, "Am I the kind of person who covets others' wealth?" Zhang Haizi humbly replied, "Of course not, young master. This is my respect for you. Don't bother. Let me ask you. If it weren't for me raising the price with that Zhang family kid today, would he have offered such a high price?" Zhang Haizi quickly replied, "Of course not." Just as he finished, Liao Bin interjected, admitting it is good enough. "So the extra money is my credit, which means the money and goods are also mine, right?" Zhang Haizi knew Liao Bin would ask for a lot, but he didn't expect it to be this much, leaving him at a loss for words. Before he could respond, Liao Bin continued, "I helped you raise the price so high, so shouldn't you thank me?" Zhang Haizi initially wanted to say that Liao Bin was just going to take the money raised, so why should he thank him? But seeing Liao Bin's menacing gaze, he could only reluctantly say, "Thank you." Liao Bin nodded, saying, "Well, a thank you should come with some sincerity. Just saying it won't do. How about this? Consider the remaining money as a thank you gift. You don't need to trouble yourself. I'll just take the card away." As Liao Bin spoke, he signaled his underlings to take the cart, and they hurried forward. Zhang Haizi saw this and panicked. It seemed they intended to take the ox cart, which he had rented in the city. Moreover, the money hadn't even warmed up in his hands yet, and he hadn't repaid his debts. How could he survive if they just took everything away? Zhang Haizi stood in the middle of the cart, blocking the way of the approaching underlings, pleading, "My lord, please. I beg you, this is the dowry money for my daughter." Liao Bin remained silent, and the underlings continued forward. 2 more strong men joined them, and seeing the situation, Zhang Haizi realized pleading was futile. However, he couldn't let them take his belongings. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Relying on his strength as a farmer, he started to wrestle with the strong men, but unfortunately, he was no match for them and was knocked to the ground in just 2 exchanges. Liao Bin came over and kicked him, spitting, "Bah, you're asking for it, still resisting, huh?" Beat him to a pulp. Just as the underlings and strong men prepared to continue their assault on Zhang Haizi, a hoarse voice shouted, "Stop, you robbers." The voice belonged to Zhang Haizi's sick wife, who, hearing the commotion outside, forced herself to come out despite her discomfort, only to see her husband being kicked to the ground. Though pale and frail from illness, she was quite beautiful. Upon seeing her, Liao Bin's eyes lit up with desire, and he leered, "You guys deal with this poor fool. I'll have a chat with the young lady." Lying on the ground, Zhang Haizi saw Liao Bin's claws reaching for his wife and furiously tried to get up, but was immediately kicked back down. He kept trying to rise, only to be knocked down again and again. At this point, he felt numb and could no longer feel the pain in his body, yet the pain in his heart was penetrating to the bone. Zhang Haizi was filled with regret. He hated Liao Bin for his greed and humiliation. He regretted not listening to Zhang Xiaochuan's advice. If he had only brought back a few dozen coins, Liao Bin could have taken them, and there wouldn't have been a dispute, nor would his wife have come out to suffer humiliation. As he watched Liao Bin tearing at his wife's clothes, Zhang Haizi's teeth ground together in rage, his eyes nearly bursting with anger. Tears of regret and unwillingness streaming down his face. In his heart, Zhang Haizi vowed that whoever saved his family at this moment, he would be willing to serve as a beast of burden for the rest of his life in gratitude. At that moment, an extremely awkward comment came through. But to Zhang Haizi, it sounded like celestial music. "Xiaohu, see? Erlang was right. What crime to bear?" Ignoring Erlang's advice, now it's come true. "This kid deserves it. Enough nonsense, save the person. You go, these few aren't enough to stretch their muscles. I'm too lazy to move." As he spoke, Luo Xiaohu had already approached, and Liao Bin and his gang of lackeys hadn't reacted yet before they were all knocked down by Luo Xiaohu. Liao Bin, frightened, stopped in his tracks and turned to run, but was grabbed by Teng Yi, who was leisurely watching the fight. Liao Bin was terrified and worried about being hit. Quickly threatening, "Let me go, I am the legitimate son of the Liao family. If you touch me, you'll regret it." Teng Yi ignored Liao Bin, not wasting words, and directly tossed him towards Luo Xiaohu, causing Liao Bin to crash down in a daze. Since Zhang Xiaochuan hadn't given any clear instructions upon arrival, they didn't want to go too far, so Luo Xiaohu kicked each of them once more and let them leave. Everything happened quickly, just as Zhang Haizi reacted. Liao Bin and the others were already stumbling away. Zhang Haizi hurried to help his wife into the house, and after a moment, he came back out, wanting to bow to the two. However, he was pulled up by Luo Xiaohu. Unable to kneel, Zhang Haizi had no choice but to give up, saying, "Thank you, heroes, for saving my family. I would like to give you these goods as a token of gratitude." Luo Xiaohu waved his hand, saying no need. Erlang instructed that if all is well, then fine. But if you encounter trouble, I have a question for you. Hearing that Zhang Xiaochuan had something to say, Zhang Haizi immediately replied, "Heroes, please ask. What are your plans for the future? If you stay here, you are bound to face retaliation." Zhang Haizi realized this as well. But he was at a loss for where to go and fell into contemplation. Luo Xiaohu continued, "Erlang said if you have nowhere to go, you can take refuge at the Zhang family, but the condition is that you must stay there as a servant for 10 years. Zhang Haizi pondered for a long time. Although the conditions were harsh, this was currently the only way out, so he reluctantly said, "All right. Then I trouble the 2 heroes to escort me to see the young lord." Little did Zhang Haizi know that this difficult choice, made out of necessity, would become his proudest achievement in the future. Chapter 074, Acquiring the Liao family Zhao heir. Holding the cake he brought back from the Zhang family along with his unfinished meal, shouted excitedly before even entering the door, "Anyang, I'm back." Before long, The room lit up with the soft yellow glow of an oil lamp in response to Zhao Er's voice, followed by the creaking sound of the door opening. His mother, looking hurried, exclaimed, "Why are you back so late?" Although Zhao's mother spoke with reproach, every word revealed her concern. Zhao Er chuckled and said, "I got held up by some things. I guess you hadn't gone to bed yet. Look at what I brought you." As he spoke, he pulled his mother into the room. Zhao's mother followed him in, saying, "I can't sleep when you don't come back. I'm afraid one day I'll end up like your father, waking up and never seeing you again. Why are you saying this at night? Just look at what I brought." As he spoke, he opened the parcel he had brought back, revealing 2 exquisite food boxes. The aroma wafted out even before they were opened. Zhao's mother caught a whiff and exclaimed, "It's food, how fragrant." Zhao Er, while opening the boxes, bragged, "This is called a lunchbox. It's not something an ordinary household can enjoy. Even the officials in the local government might not have it every day." Zhao's mother was amused by Zhao Er's boastfulness and laughed, saying, "I want to have a taste." She picked up a pair of chopsticks, took a piece, and after chewing a few times, smiled and said, "Delicious. It really is not something an ordinary household can have." Zhao Er then opened the other box to find a round cake inside, lacking the extravagant decorations of a birthday cake, resembling a mousse cake instead. Zhao's mother, sniffing the cake's aroma, remarked, "What a lovely smell. What is this? It looks wonderful." Zhao Er, having never seen the cake before, thought it was just an ordinary pastry. So he was also taken aback and awkwardly replied, "This is called cake. I've never had it before." As he spoke, he noticed a wooden knife and several wooden forks in the box, realizing they were meant for cutting and eating. Zhao Er, being a qualified foodie, quickly understood how to eat the cake. He grabbed the knife and cut into the cake, unintentionally swallowing some saliva when he saw the creamy filling inside. After cutting it, he first offered a piece to Zhao's mother, then took one for himself and started eating. Zhao Er felt like he had wasted the first 20 years of his life. If he had never tasted such a delicious thing, it felt like his journey in this world had been in vain. He struggled to find the right words to describe the cake's flavor, mumbling for a while before finally saying, "Delicious." Zhao's mother, with a smile, added, "Delicious. At my age, this is the best pastry I've ever had." Zhao Er wanted to eat another piece, but his hand was slapped away by Zhao's mother, who said, "How can you eat it all at once when it's so good? Save some for later." Zhao Er knew his mother's habit of saving good food for special occasions, but he felt that today was different. With a hint of regret, he explained, "Mother, it's not that I don't want to share, but the person who gave it said it must be eaten before dawn tomorrow, or it will have to be thrown away. Oh, it can't be wasted so soon," she exclaimed, grabbing a piece and urging Zhao Er, "Hurry, eat it before it goes bad. Delicious." Thus, the mother and son devoured the cake as if it were a whirlwind. After finishing, Zhao Er returned to his room to rest. Lying on the bed, he began to plan his next move. Liao Kuan was feeling frustrated. His last attempt to collaborate with Huang's family and Zhang Xiaochuan had failed, upsetting the local governor. And even the salt business he had intended to hand over to Liao Kuan this year was now given to his rival, Lei Shan. He blamed all this on Zhang Xiaochuan and wanted to get rid of him quickly. However, when he tried to contact Huang Antai again, he was turned away, clearly wanting to distance himself. Liao Kuan had to think of another way, and there was one option left, but he was reluctant to use it unless absolutely necessary. Just as he was in a dilemma, the doorman came to report that Zhang Xiaochuan wished to see him. Liao Kuan thought to himself, "This weasel coming to pay respects to the chickens has no good intentions, but since he is here, I might as well meet him." Although Liao Kuan was not fond of Zhang Xiaochuan, he still needed to put on a show, as they were both people of status. Therefore, he invited Zhang Xiaochuan to the main hall for tea. Before the servant could come to brew the tea, Zhang Xiaochuan interrupted and then gave a look to Yaoer, who looked confused. Zhang Xiaochuan awkwardly said, "Take out the tea we brought." Yaoer responded with an "oh" and took out a jar of tea from her backpack. Zhang Xiaochuan gestured and said to Liao Kuan, "How about trying the tea I brought? Let us consider it as my treat." Seeing that he was offering tea right away with a friendly attitude, Liao Kuan felt a bit more at ease, and his demeanor softened. He replied, "All right. Let us brew the tea brought by Erlang. I enjoyed it immensely last time." In fact, Zhang Xiaochuan was there to stir trouble, but his gentle approach was not a tactic to appear weak, it was simply a habit. He remembered in his previous life, whenever there were many issues with suppliers, the leadership would have him invite them for tea. During those meetings, Zhang Xiaochuan and his team, as the party in control, would speak the harshest words with the most humble attitudes, leading suppliers to sign a series of unequal agreements regarding quality guarantees, delivery quantities, penalties, and so on. Consequently, when they invited suppliers for tea afterward, it felt no different than the anti-corruption agency inviting someone for tea in a drama. Zhang Xiaochuan courteously replied to Liao Kuan, "If it's good, I can have someone bring you a few jars." Liao Kuan smiled and said, "That sounds good. By the way, what brings Erlang here this time?" "To acquire the Liao family." With those 4 light words, Zhang Xiaochuan pulled Liao Kuan from heaven to hell. The smile that hadn't even had time to fade collided with the anger that surged up his face. At that moment, Liao Kuan's expression became ferocious, and he coldly said, "What did you say?" It was clear Liao Kuan heard and understood perfectly. He was trying to intimidate Zhang Xiaochuan, implying that wanting to acquire the Liao family was a reckless move. However, Zhang Xiaochuan remained unfazed, took a sip of the freshly brewed tea, and calmly replied, "I said I want to acquire the Liao family, specifically the land adjacent to the Zhang family." This statement was like adding fuel to the fire. as the Liao family's land was mostly adjacent to the Zhang family's. Was this addition meant to further provoke? Well, you succeeded. Liao Kuan was furious, but then suddenly realized, cursing inwardly, that this kid started off submissive, only to suddenly propose acquiring the Liao family, throwing him off balance and almost leading him astray. Chapter 075. The contract. Once Liao Kuan calmed down, his intelligence returned, and he sneered, Zhang family kid. Are you here just to amuse yourself? You want to acquire the Liao family? Not to mention whether you have such an appetite, even if you had the money. Did I say I wanted to sell? Zhang Xiaochuan still maintained his unhurried demeanor and provocatively said, I think you might be misunderstanding. I'm here to inform you of my intention to acquire the Liao family, not to ask if you're willing. Liao Kuan was so infuriated that he even notified me, saying, what right do you have to unilaterally decide this matter? He looked at Zhang Xiaochuan as if he were a fool and said, Erlang, go back and check your brain to avoid coming up with strange ideas. The joke is over. I don't have time to indulge you, so goodbye. Zhang Xiaochuan showed no intention of leaving. Instead, he leisurely took out a book and inexplicably said, does the Liao family head like reading? I recently got a book. Let me lend it to you. Saying this, he tossed the book onto Liao Kuan's desk. Liao Kuan picked it up, thinking he wanted to see what tricks the kid could play, but as soon as he opened a page, he immediately closed it again. Shocked and angry, he asked, where did you get this? Zhang Xiaochuan put on a foolish expression and replied, are you stupid? Of course, I took it from your room. In an instant, Liao Kuan felt a mix of emotions. He had originally kept this evidence to control the officials he was currying favor with, but unexpectedly, he had fallen into a trap and was now being blackmailed. Knowing that saying more would be futile, Liao Kuan asked, what do you want? Didn't I say? I want all the land of the Liao family. Impossible. Change the conditions. Liao Kuan was very firm. This land had been accumulated over generations, and he couldn't let it go so easily. Zhang Xiaochuan held life-threatening evidence, so he couldn't back down, saying, it seems you don't understand the situation. Do you think you have the right to negotiate conditions now? Liao Kuan remained silent, seemingly saying, I want to agree. Let us see what you can do about it. Zhang Xiaochuan continued, if you refuse to cooperate, I believe the local magistrate might be interested in this book. At that time, I could buy your family's land from the government. Liao Kuan didn't expect Zhang Xiaochuan to be so ruthless. He was being pushed into a corner. He said, don't force me. Or else what? Zhang Xiaochuan scoffed, what will you do? If you can't leave the Liao family, how will you show it to the magistrate? Liao Kuan looked at the still calm Zhang Xiaochuan and asked, what's wrong? You don't believe I dare to act against you? Zhang Xiaochuan replied, I believe you can't act against me. If you don't believe it, you can try. As soon as he finished saying try, Luo Xiaohu and Tang Yi immediately stood up behind him. Liao Kuan's gaze narrowed. Although he couldn't fight, he was sharp and perceptive. Sensing danger like a beast was stalking him, he instantly deflated, realizing that Zhang Xiaochuan had him under control. He then softened his tone and asked, how do you want to buy it? Zhang Xiaochuan said smugly, now that's the attitude for business negotiations. I plan to offer 5,000 guan for all your land. Don't go too far. Liao Kuan immediately exploded again. The Liao family had nearly 10,000 acres of land, and you're offering 5,000 guan? That averages out to only 500 yuan per acre. These are all fertile fields, and conservatively speaking, they should be worth over 30 guan per acre. The price Zhang Xiaochuan offered was less than a tenth of that. It was like robbing them outright. How could he not be furious? 4,000 guan. You. 3,000 guan. Liao Kuan dared not speak recklessly anymore. If he continued, he would be left with nothing. Considering that if other methods failed and he really had to sell to this guy, naturally selling for more was better, he said, 5,000 is a reasonable price. Zhang Xiaochuan replied in a mocking tone, emphasizing each word, that's right. There's an ancient saying in China, those who know when to yield are the true heroes. Liao Kuan saw the ridiculous expression on Zhang Xiaochuan's face, clearly mocking him, which made him even angrier, but helpless. He had to say, however, this Liao family is so large, it's not up to me alone. I need to discuss it with the elders in the clan first. I will definitely give you a response in a few days. It was obvious that Liao Kuan wanted to buy some time, delaying for a few days to think of a solution. However, Zhang Xiaochuan had suffered many losses in his previous life due to similar tactics. Usually, after a few days, there would be no further updates. So he said, we need to finalize this today, or don't blame me for overturning the table. Tomorrow, I will take this book to the local government office, and there will definitely be someone interested in it. Liao Kuan's face turned grim again as he shouted, don't go too far. Can't you give me a few days to consider? Zhang Xiaochuan ignored Liao Kuan's roar and issued an ultimatum. Either we sign the contract now, or forget it. I'm in a hurry to get home and catch up on sleep. Who has the time to deal with you? For a moment, Liao Kuan was stunned. It felt like his house was being raided, and he wasn't even allowed to think about it. The Zhang family kid was truly decisive. He seemed weak on the surface, but his words were powerful. However, Liao Kuan also made a resolution. Since it had come to this point, there was nothing more to worry about. With this thought, his frown relaxed, and his expression returned to calm. He said steadily, all right, since you are so eager, let's sign the contract now, but the land transfer needs some time. Zhang Xiaochuan readily agreed. Of course, the land transfer will take some time. We'll sign the contract first, and the land transfer will be set for 1 month. Zhang Xiaochuan took out the contract he had prepared earlier, which was written in detail according to modern standards, covering everything meticulously, including the names and addresses of both parties. The scope of the transaction, the method of handover, detailed lists, and liability clauses, etc. Liao Kuan held this strange sales contract, unsure how to read it. And Zhang Xiaochuan kindly pointed out that it should be read horizontally from left to right. However, as soon as Liao Kuan saw the first sentence, he wanted to curse. The first line read, based on the principles of fairness and justice, both parties, on the basis of equality, voluntariness, and honesty, have reached the following agreement after full and friendly consultation. Liao Kuan was cursing internally. Where was the fairness and voluntariness in this? This was a blatant attempt to undermine him. This kid was too cunning. But as he continued to read, cold sweat began to pour down his back. Although the content was straightforward and cumbersome, the way it was written had the advantage of avoiding ambiguous interpretations. Moreover, it was so detailed that once this so-called contract was signed, Liao Kuan would find it nearly impossible to play any tricks. This is definitely not something a teenager could write. Such intelligence and meticulous thought are beyond even a provincial governor. The person behind the Zhang family is truly formidable. However, Liao Kuan did not wish to die immediately, so he had no choice but to sign the land acquisition contract. In ancient times, signing contracts was rather unfair, particularly to the weaker party. For instance, once Liao Kuan signed this contract, it would take effect immediately without requiring any governmental notarization. This contract would be considered legal during disputes in court. In ancient times, it was understood that officials followed public law while citizens adhered to private agreements. Thus, privately signed contracts, whether coerced or not, were deemed legal. For example, now that Liao Kuan has signed a contract, if he fails to fulfill it, it would be entirely reasonable for Zhang Xiaochuan to resort to extreme measures to ensure the Liao family complies. On one side, Zhang Xiaochuan happily returned home with the contract, while on the other side, Liao Kuan clutched the contract as if mourning a great loss. Chapter 76. Master is wonderful. Liao Kuan squeezed the contract tightly in his hand, as if it were Zhang Xiaochuan himself, whom he wanted to strangle. His trusted aide, Sunda, walked in and greeted Liao Kuan, saying, Master, what do you need me for? Liao Kuan's fierce expression had calmed down after Sunda entered, and he said, I asked you to contact the people in Songzhou. What is the progress? Sunda replied, as long as the master makes a decision, we can act within 3 days. Liao Kuan clenched his fists and slammed the table, saying, then go arrange it. Yes. At the Zhang family residence, Tung Yi remarked, why do you always have to eat when you come here? Can't you eat at home first? Look at you gobbling down your food. Have you not eaten for days? Zhao Er, who was busy devouring his meal, mumbled with his mouth full, don't you think this food is especially delicious? Just this meal alone could make me overeat. You have a point. I remember when we first prepared these dishes, I was also looking forward to every meal. I think I've gained weight. Luo Xiaohu looked at these two foodies, feeling speechless, especially at Tung Yi's comment which made him feel embarrassed. At that moment, Yao Er approached and said to Zhao Er, the young master wants to know if you finished eating. If you have, I'll take you to his room. Zhao Er, who was already quite full, couldn't resist and took a few more bites before telling Tung Yi, please pack up the leftovers. Zhao Er followed Yao Er to Zhang Xiaochuan's room. Zhang Xiaochuan pointed to a nearby stool and said, sit down and talk. Yao Er picked up a cup of tea from the table and handed it to Zhao Er, who carefully accepted the glass filled with tea. The aroma of the tea was inviting, and he couldn't help but take a sip. It was fragrant with a hint of bitterness, followed by a sweet aftertaste that left his palate refreshed. Since he hadn't expected Zhao Er to take so long to eat, the tea had steeped for a while and was now at the perfect temperature. Feeling a bit full after eating so much, Zhao Er couldn't help but take a big gulp, finishing the cup of tea in one go. It was both thirst-quenching and refreshing, leading him to let out a long, satisfying belch, and then, reflexively, he exclaimed, so good, realizing he had spoken out of turn. Zhao Er quickly became embarrassed and awkwardly said, I'm sorry, I was rude. Yao Er couldn't help but giggle at his awkwardness, while Zhang Xiaochuan felt indifferent and said, it's fine, the last time you brought the Liao family's account book, it was a great help. Originally, I wanted you to move your family to the estate, but I heard you kindly declined. Zhao Er, fearing that Zhang Xiaochuan might misunderstand, quickly explained, it's not that I don't appreciate the offer, but having received so much kindness, I want to contribute more. It seems that the Liao family might still pose a threat to you, so I'm temporarily staying there to keep an eye on things. Zhang Xiaochuan imitated the manner of leaders from later times and said, your initiative is commendable, keep it up. Zhao Er didn't quite understand but assumed it was a compliment, so he solemnly expressed his loyalty. I am willing to do anything for you. Zhang Xiaochuan felt that there was too much fluff in the conversation and got straight to the point. Is there something you wanted to discuss today? Zhao Er whispered. The Liao family might be making a move in the next few days. I haven't pinpointed the exact timing, but I came to remind you to prepare in advance. Zhang Xiaochuan was quite annoyed. He was hoping for peaceful development, but some people were intent on destruction. He sighed. I was only planning to take their land, but it seems they are rushing to their doom. Do you have any other news? Zhao Er quickly replied. I am familiar with someone who purchases supplies for the estate. Based on the amount of grain and fodder they are preparing, it seems they are gathering over 100 men. Good. That's very useful information. You should return early and stay safe. Remember, safety first. After sending Zhao Er off, Zhang Xiaochuan hurried to find Mo Tianji to discuss countermeasures. Mo Tianji stated, if over 100 people come to cause trouble at the Zhang family, they are definitely seeking their own demise. We just need to increase the number of night sentinels from 10 to 20 and expand the perimeter by a mile. That's all. Although Zhang Xiaochuan knew that these were elite troops, for safety's sake, he wanted to ensure there were more precautions. Su Changming was diligently conducting various experiments in the laboratory, feeling that his master treated him exceptionally well. Not only did he teach him knowledge, but he also provided many opportunities for research and learning to facilitate his studies. He even assigned him a young maid, who was the daughter of Zhang Haizi, known as Arya. Su Changming hoped to achieve success soon to help his master, as he intended to follow him for life to repay his kindness and teaching. The reason Zhang Xiaochuan treated Su Changming so well was simply that the boy was exceptionally talented. In just a few months, he had mastered basic chemistry knowledge and could conduct experiments independently. Some of the materials Zhang Xiaochuan needed had chemical formulas, but synthesizing them required purification, refining, and repeated synthesis experiments before he could finally obtain the desired substances. This process felt tedious to Zhang Xiaochuan, so he shamelessly thought of having his disciple handle these monotonous tasks and called it a chemistry practical assignment to give Su Changming more time for experiments. Zhang Xiaochuan thoughtfully assigned him a maid, and surprisingly, it worked well. Sometimes, Zhang Xiaochuan would feel a bit guilty and think, "It turns out I am a capitalist at heart." When Zhang Xiaochuan arrived, Su Changming was still busy in the laboratory. Due to his young age, he had to use a ladder to reach materials that were slightly higher up. Zhang Xiaochuan felt a pang of concern watching him, but he was too lazy to help. He comforted himself, thinking that this shouldn't count as employing child labor since it was part of an after-school practical assignment. Yes, that's right, just an after-school practical assignment. He reassured himself. At that moment, Arya, who was nearby, noticed Zhang Xiaochuan and was about to greet him. Zhang Xiaochuan gestured for her not to come over, so as not to disturb Su Changming, who was focused on his experiment. After a while, when Su Changming's experiment was basically coming to an end, he stopped, and Zhang Xiaochuan approached to speak. "Changming, what are you working on?" Su Changming was very happy to hear Zhang Xiaochuan's voice and hurried over to bow. But Zhang Xiaochuan raised his hand to stop him. Su Changming knew his master didn't mind such formalities, so he stood up straight and said, "Master, I." He appeared hesitant, looking awkward and uneasy like a child who had done something wrong facing a parent. Zhang Xiaochuan, always easygoing, comforted him. "It's okay. Just say what's on your mind. I'm very democratic." After saying this, he even forced a rather stiff smile. Under Zhang Xiaochuan's repeated reassurance, Su Changming murmured, "I'm sorry, master. The smokeless powder experiment failed." Zhang Xiaochuan's heart sank. He had come specifically for the smokeless powder. It seemed that Su Changming was still a bit inexperienced. He couldn't even manage such a not-so-complex synthesis. It appeared he would have to step in himself, truly a life of toil. Thinking this, he said, "It's fine. Who hasn't failed before? I'll help you with the experiment." Su Changming defended himself. "No, master, it wasn't a failure of the experiment." Zhang Xiaochuan asked curiously. "Then what was it?" Su Changming replied, "It's a lack of materials. We didn't have cotton, so we couldn't directly make nitrocellulose." Zhang Xiaochuan slapped his forehead, realizing the problem. Of course, cotton was not yet widely available. Without it, making smokeless powder was futile. It seemed he would have to go back to researching black powder. Before he could speak, Su Changming continued, "So I took the liberty of using kapok as a substitute for cotton." Genius. Zhang Xiaochuan praised him inwardly, but outwardly he remained composed and shamelessly said, "Well, finding alternatives is also part of the practice." How did it turn out? Seeing that his master didn't blame him, Su Changming spoke with more confidence. Kapok could indeed be synthesized, but the results were poor. The reaction might not have been complete, resulting in smoke and some impurities, which differed greatly from the finished product described in his master's formula. "That's fine," Zhang Xiaochuan exclaimed. "Genius. A few flaws don't matter. As long as it works, that's enough. In this era, having nitrocellulose with some impurities is sufficient." Zhang Xiaochuan was deep in thought when Su Changming continued. "So, I tested the residues and found that the smoke and remnants were likely due to the presence of acidic and basic impurities in the kapok. I then processed the kapok by degreasing and neutralizing the acids and bases." Su Changming paused at this point, and Zhang Xiaochuan assumed it was unsuccessful, comforting him. "Failure is normal. Finding substitutes in chemical synthesis is not easy." Su Changming awkwardly replied, "Well, actually, I succeeded." This left Zhang Xiaochuan embarrassed, thinking, "If you succeeded, why are you being so dramatic?" It seems that ancient people had a tendency to be overly cautious in their speech. Zhang Xiaochuan feigned calmness and said, "That's great. Prepare the finished product. I want to load it into bullets and see the effect." A group of them moved to another room that resembled a laboratory, but with far fewer bottles and jars, replaced instead by various iron pieces. In Zhang Xiaochuan's words, these were called parts. Various parts were labeled with tags such as hammer, firing pin, barrel, and gearbox. Since the development of machine tools, producing different firearm parts had become very simple, but currently, they could only operate machines manually, which was relatively inefficient. Therefore, although the room was filled with a dazzling array of parts, they could only assemble about a dozen or 20 guns. Zhang Xiaochuan first took a box of empty cartridges, with the bullet heads already in place. He carefully filled in the gunpowder, fixed the primer cap and primer, and finally used a manual sealing machine to press down hard, ensuring the base cap tightly secured the bullet casing. He repeated this process to make 50 rounds of ammunition. Next, he prepared to assemble the first firearm, the AK-47. which is considered the most classic automatic rifle of later generations. With modern chemical and mechanical knowledge, there was no need to mess around with black powder or flintlock guns. Thus, Zhang Xiaochuan's starting point was the AK-47. Once assembled, Zhang Xiaochuan held the rifle, feeling a surge of excitement. In his previous life, he had only handled a semi-automatic rifle during military training, firing a total of 8 rounds, and had always dreamed of one day playing with an automatic rifle. He never expected to do so in the Tang dynasty over 1,000 years ago. Zhang Xiaochuan awkwardly attempted to aim the gun, positioning it and aligning the sights, while pressing his cheek against the gun body to keep the muzzle pointing forward as he stepped forward. He felt that at this moment, he looked incredibly handsome. However, in the eyes of Su Changming and Arya, the master looked quite ridiculous. They wondered if he had lost his mind. Zhang Xiaochuan focused on the sights for a moment, satisfied, and quickly decided to test it out. He asked Arya to call for Mo Tianji while he took Su Changming to the threshing floor, which actually served as a training ground. Zhang Xiaochuan instructed Teng Yi to set up the target used for archery practice, then loaded the magazine with bullets. At this moment, Mo Tianji also arrived and saw Zhang Xiaochuan aiming the gun from a distance. He called out, "Is this what you referred to as the 47? Zhang Xiaochuan lowered the gun from his shoulder, pointing it downward, and replied, "Yes, it's the AK-47, a powerful weapon. This is the first official test, so for safety's sake, please stand back a bit." Seeing Zhang Xiaochuan's serious demeanor, which did not seem feigned, Mo Tianji said, "No, since it's so dangerous, Erlang cannot test it personally." With a wave of his hand, Teng Yi stepped forward, indicating for Zhang Xiaochuan to give him the gun. Zhang Xiaochuan, who valued his life and had no moral qualms, handed the gun over to Teng Yi and carefully taught him how to aim and fire. Although Teng Yi had never seen or used a gun before, he easily remembered what Zhang Xiaochuan taught him. He then shouldered the gun and asked Zhang Xiaochuan and the others to stand back for safety. Mo Tianji looked at the target, which was a full 200 meters away, and said, "Can it really hit from this distance? The best archers can only shoot accurately within 100 steps. This target is at least 200 steps away. Even the best archer in history would struggle." Just then, a loud bang rang out. Looking closely, the target remained motionless. Zhang Xiaochuan was still pondering what went wrong when he saw that both Mo Tianji and Teng Yi looked as if they had seen a ghost. It turned out that both of them were skilled and had better eyesight than average, so they noticed the bullet had grazed past the target. It was clear that Teng Yi had trembled when he pulled the trigger, but the bullet's trajectory proved it was possible to shoot that far. Feeling embarrassed, Teng Yi said, "I was startled by the sudden noise. Let me take another shot, and I'm sure I can hit it." This time, Mo Tianji and Zhang Xiaochuan remained silent, focusing intently on the target. With another bang, the target now had a small hole in the center. Zhang Xiaochuan gestured for Teng Yi to take a few more shots. Soon, a series of gunshots rang out as Teng Yi fired a total of 10 rounds. He then set the gun down and ran over to retrieve the target. Mo Tianji was even more excited than Zhang Xiaochuan. He rushed over to grab the target, running his fingers over the bullet holes. Only one shot hit the center, but the others were all on the target. Mo Tianji exclaimed, "It actually hit. And look at how cleanly the center was penetrated. It clearly still had power after going through. I bet it could penetrate even if it were 50 steps further." Zhang Xiaochuan picked up a shell from the ground and noted that there was very little residue inside. The smoke was minimal when Teng Yi fired, indicating that this range was not the limit and that further testing was needed. Zhang Xiaochuan said, "50 steps is too short. Let's change the target to 300 meters. Teng Yi did not go to retrieve the target, but held onto the gun tightly, directing Luo Xiaohu to get it instead. Luo Xiaohu protested, saying, "Erlang, let me try shooting as well." He then turned to Teng Yi, urging, "Why don't you hurry and get the target? Give me the gun." Although Teng Yi was straightforward with people, he was no fool. He realized that Luo Xiaohu wanted the gun, and there was no way he would let it go. The two of them were in a tug-of-war, and fearing an accidental discharge, Zhang Xiaochuan decided to let Teng Yi continue as the shooter for testing, signaling for Luo Xiaohu to retrieve the target, which he reluctantly did. Chapter 078. Pei Rou and Liang. Once the target was in place, the testing continued. And at 300 meters, it hit accurately. At 350 meters, it hit accurately as well. After the final test, the shooting accuracy at 500 meters was barely acceptable. Upon inspecting the target, the holes were neatly cut, indicating that this was not the limit of its range. According to the parameters of the AK-47, the maximum range exceeds 1,000 meters. Based on the current test results, the estimated maximum range of Zhang Xiaochuan's modified AK-47 shouldn't be too far off. One must admire the keen eyesight of ancient martial artists. They effectively increased the AK-47's effective range by 200 meters. However, for Zhang Xiaochuan, it was still around 300 meters. Even so, this is significantly better compared to the bow and arrow, which has a maximum range of just over 100 meters, a clear advantage. After the testing, Zhang Xiaochuan had Yao record all the data. Since the gun was functioning properly, he naturally wanted to fire a few rounds for enjoyment. In the end, Mo Tianji and Luo Xiaohu also took a few shots. Indeed, martial artists have an edge when it comes to shooting, as their strong eyesight and steady hands were remarkable. Mo Tianji and Luo Xiaohu performed quite well in target shooting, while Zhang Xiaochuan seemed to have little luck with the targets. Zhang Xiaochuan immediately asked Mo Tianji to find 10 people to assemble the firearms and start making ammunition. Su Changming was also busy synthesizing nitrocellulose. Although the substitution with Kapok was successful, the quantity was still limited, so mass production of firearms would still face ammunition supply issues. Although cotton was not widely available in this era, it was not a rare commodity, especially since it was cultivated in many areas to the west. It would only be a matter of time before a large supply of cotton could be secured. As Zhang Xiaochuan went to check on the ammunition production, he was unexpectedly visited by a familiar guest. Chuanwazi, sister is here, come out. Pei Rou, with her straightforward and lively personality, made her presence known. There were no chili peppers in Sichuan at the moment, so it was unclear where her spiciness came from. Zhang Xiaochuan approached at a leisurely pace. And by the time he reached the hall, Pei Rou had already entered. Great, no need to go outside now. Yaoer, make some tea, he instructed. Zhang Xiaochuan casually greeted. Pei Nyangzi has arrived. What Pei Nyangzi? Call me sister, Pei Rou insisted, still considering herself the elder sister. Zhang Xiaochuan didn't bother to argue and obediently replied. I've met Sister Pei. Good, that's better, she said. Now let me introduce you to someone. As Pei Rou spoke, she stepped aside, revealing a handsome man in his 30s. Zhang Xiaochuan recognized him immediately. This was Yang Zhao, the person who had previously tried to attack him at the flower house and later fainted from Zhang Xiaochuan's ruse. He couldn't help but wonder what Pei Rou's intentions were in bringing him along. Pei Rou continued. This is Yang Zhao, you've met before. As they say, no fight, no acquaintance. From now on, we're all family. Oh, listen to me. We've always been family. He's actually your cousin. Zhang Xiaochuan had long forgotten. But Pei Rou's words reminded him that he was indeed Yang Yuhuan's cousin. Zhang Xiaochuan bowed slightly to greet him, and Yang Zhao returned the gesture with a smile. Zhang Xiaochuan turned to Pei Rou and asked, what do you mean by saying we're all family? This isn't just about brother Zhao helping me out. I've already been released, and just need to choose an auspicious day. At this point, Pei Rou surprisingly became a bit shy. Zhang Xiaochuan understood and said, in that case, congratulations, sister. When will you hold a feast? I will definitely be there. Pei Rou smiled and said, that has settled then. You must prepare a generous gift for me. It's only fair since I'm entrusting my little sister to you. Zhang Xiaochuan patted his chest and replied, you can rest assured, I won't let you down. He then asked, is there anything else for you today? Pei Rou playfully replied, yes, I actually plan to give it to you later, but seeing how eager you are, wanting news of my little sister, I thought I'd share it sooner. Since Yang Yuhuan went to Luoyang, Pei Rou had taken on the role of messenger, mainly to keep things under wraps and prevent others from discovering that the young woman in seclusion was in close correspondence with a man. Therefore, the letters appeared to be addressed to Pei Rou, but contained messages for Zhang Xiaochuan. Zhang Xiaochuan found this approach unnecessarily complicated. He thought he could simply send a letter directly to Yang Yuhuan, but Pei Rou stubbornly refused to give him the address. So he had no choice but to go along with her. Considering the time, Yang Yuhuan should have written back by now. Zhang Xiaochuan could guess the content of Pei Rou's correspondence, but found her delivery methods quite bothersome. Thus, when he saw someone else with Pei Rou, he directly requested the letter, and this time, Pei Rou was much more accommodating. Not wanting to argue with Pei Rou, Zhang Xiaochuan agreed. You're right. Why don't you stay for a simple meal today? Eating together had become a routine. Pei Rou always insisted on staying for a meal whenever she delivered messages. She naturally replied, of course. I'll go find Su Sa to see what we're having for lunch. After saying this, she started to leave but then sat back down and said, you should get to know brother Zhao better. You stay and chat with him while I take Yaoer with me. Although Zhang Xiaochuan wasn't particularly shrewd, having lived a good portion of his past life, he quickly realized that Yang Zhao had something to discuss with him today. He responded, sure, you can go ahead. The estate is under construction everywhere, so be careful. This was not just a tease, but genuine concern. Pei Rou caught on and smiled at both Zhang Xiaochuan and Yang Zhao before leaving with Yaoer. Zhang Xiaochuan took a good look at Yang Zhao. Although he was a bit older, this was relative to the merely teenage Zhang Xiaochuan. He was actually only in his 30s. Despite appearing somewhat frugal in attire, he couldn't hide his handsome and refined demeanor, resembling a graceful young master. If he dressed up a bit, he would certainly charm countless young women. Yang Zhao felt a bit uncomfortable under Zhang Xiaochuan's gaze and spoke up. Last time we met, I was a bit reckless. I'd like to apologize to you here. Zhang Xiaochuan casually replied, it's fine. What goes around comes around. No need for apologies. Yang Zhao understood Zhang Xiaochuan was referring to the incident where he pretended to be castrated and awkwardly smiled before changing the subject. Your reputation is quite well known now. Zhang Xiaochuan thought to himself, it's not like I'm famous now. I've always been known. Who in the entire Shu province doesn't know that I've been in school for 9 years and am the king of being held back? However, Zhang Xiaochuan didn't mind these things and casually said, I hope brother Yang doesn't find it amusing. Yang Zhao realized that Zhang Xiaochuan misunderstood him, so he said, did you misunderstand? What I meant was the matters of glass and cooking. Nowadays, people are saying that you are a prodigy. Not only able to make glass, but also to cook, and that you have protective magic. Zhang Xiaochuan felt a bit speechless. Is this how people see me now? Ancient people really lack entertainment. Even a little commotion turns into something outrageous. If Yang Zhao knew what Zhang Xiaochuan was thinking at that moment, he would definitely scold him for showing off. After all, these two matters are like legends. How could you accomplish them overnight and then blame others for being talkative? Zhang Xiaochuan pretended to suddenly understand and said, so that's what it is. It's nothing worth mentioning. He added silently in his heart, there will definitely be more outrageous things in the future. Chapter 79. The great trader Yang Gua Yang Zhao complimented, of course. You are a genius, so you wouldn't take such trivial matters to heart. Recently, Filelu launched a new dish, which is said to be life-reviving. The taste as he spoke, Yang Zhao smacked his lips, indicating that the food at Filelu is unforgettable, and continued. I wonder if you are aware of the reason behind it. It turned out this was the reason he was going around in circles. Zhang Xiaochuan didn't like beating around the bush, so he said, the matter of Filelu was initiated by me. I only provided them with a new type of seasoning. Brother Yang, feel free to speak directly. After all, you said it yourself, we are family. Yang Zhao immediately feigned surprise and said, so that is how it is. We are family, and we shouldn't beat around the bush. However, don't find it tedious. Since we are family, let me explain the whole story. Thus, Zhang Xiaochuan listened attentively. Yang Zhao began to narrate, last year, when I was serving as the county magistrate of Xindu, I made a friend who is quite a figure in Shu. His name is Xinyu Zhongtong. Xinyu Zhongtong, Zhang Xiaochuan exclaimed, interrupting Yang Zhao's narration. The name struck him like a bolt from the blue. It reminded him of certain events, or rather a piece of text. Yang Guozhong, originally named Zhao, served in Shu and was affiliated with the local power Xinyu Zhongtong. Thus, Yang Zhao was the former name of Yang Guozhong before he became famous. Yang Zhao looked confused. And before he could ask, Zhang Xiaochuan said, the great trader Yang Gua. He stopped abruptly, realizing why he felt strange when he first heard the name. Now it all made sense. Yang Zhao didn't know what was going on with Zhang Xiaochuan and weakly asked, are you, perhaps, acquainted with brother Xinyu? In fact, Yang Zhao wanted to ask if Zhang Xiaochuan had a grudge against Xinyu Zhongtong. If there was a grudge, things could get awkward. Zhang Xiaochuan awkwardly smiled and said, Xinyu Zhongtong is well known. Few in Shu would not know him. I didn't expect brother Yang to actually know him, so I was a bit surprised. Please continue. Although Zhang Xiaochuan's explanation was somewhat forced, Yang Zhao felt relieved that there was no enmity, and he didn't dwell on anything else. He continued, my foolish brother has received much care from Xinyu, including all the expenses for rower-s registration, so he has great kindness towards me. Zhang Xiaochuan nodded in agreement, signaling Yang Zhao to continue. Yang Zhao paused slightly, and then said, Xinyu has a great love for food and cannot resist his appetite. Zhang Xiaochuan roughly guessed Yang Zhao's intention. Yang Zhao continued, previously, Xinyu sent someone to learn cooking, and when Fulai building reopened, the dishes were incredibly colorful and delicious. Xinyu, finding it troublesome, offered a large sum of money to ask Fulai building to teach him the recipes. Fulai building initially refused, but later, seeing Xinyu's sincerity, pointed him in the right direction. Zhang Xiaochuan interjected, to come to me? Exactly. Yang Zhao thought about how to gradually reveal the chips he had from Xinyu Zhongtong to achieve his goal. Just as Yang Zhao was calculating, he heard Zhang Xiaochuan say, this is a small matter. Yang Zhao didn't expect such a simple agreement, momentarily taken aback. However, being quick-witted, he soon recovered and clasped his hands in thanks, saying, I didn't expect Erlang to be so straightforward, but I cannot let Erlang suffer a loss. I will definitely offer some financial reward. Zhang Xiaochuan waved his hand. This is a small issue. After we finish eating, I will have Huang Pengzi take you to get it. Yang Guozhong, being a sharp-minded person and having mingled in society since childhood, was well-versed in the culture of dining. Having gained such a great benefit, he naturally catered to Zhang Xiaochuan during the meal, and thus, the dinner was enjoyable for both host and guest. After the meal, Huang Pengzi led Yang Zhao to the storage area for monosodium glutamate. Huang Pengzi had been making monosodium glutamate in his spare time after cooking for Zhang Xiaochuan every day. So there was quite a bit in the warehouse now. On the way, Yang Zhao asked the question he had been holding back for a while. You're so thin. Why are you called Huang Pengzi? Huang Pengzi was caught off guard and stopped in his tracks. Seeing Huang Pengzi halt, Yang Zhao thought that perhaps this question was inappropriate. So he said, I was being reckless. Huang Pengzi replied, actually, it's nothing much. I used to be very fat. But then something happened at home, and I lost my appetite for a while, so I slimmed down. Looking at the current situation, it seems I'll soon gain weight again. I see. Where are we going? We're here. Huang Pengzi opened the door and pointed to a row of neatly arranged large jars inside, saying, this is the secret to making food delicious. How much do you want to take? Yang Zhao fell into contemplation as he looked at the 2 rows of jars. If they were all full, each jar would hold at least 4 stones. With 30 jars, that would be 120 stones. According to what Huang Pengzi said earlier, at 10 guan per pound, this warehouse would contain nearly 200,000 guan worth of goods. Thinking about this made Yang Zhao's legs tremble a bit. 200,000 guan just lying around in the warehouse so casually, and it seemed there wasn't even a guard. Since there was no guard, Yang Zhao suddenly slapped himself. Huang Pengzi looked bewildered and asked, I asked how much you want to take, and you stood there for a while, then suddenly slapped yourself. What does that mean? Just now, Yang Zhao was suddenly overwhelmed by distracting thoughts and had to slap himself to regain his composure. Once he collected himself, he realized he had lost his composure and apologized to the chubby man, saying, I was lost in thought for a moment, and then a fly landed on my cheek. So I waved it away. The chubby man, hearing Yang Zhao's explanation, was unconcerned and repeated, I don't know how much MSG you need, brother Yang. When Yang Zhao arrived, Xianyu Zhongtong had given him 10,000 coins along with the authority to spend 100,000 coins. However, this money was meant for Yang Zhao to learn the methods of enhancing flavors, essentially, to buy a recipe. but now it had turned into purchasing a finished product, which left Yang Zhao uncertain. Nevertheless, it was too late to leave empty-handed, so he decided to buy a bit to see what Xian Yuzhongtong would think. Having made up his mind, Yang Zhao said to the chubby man, "Please get me 20 jin." The chubby man picked up an iron vessel resembling a water ladle, with an open mouth at the front. Anyone from a later generation would definitely recognize it as a rice scoop from a supermarket. Each scoop weighed about a jin. And the chubby man, worried that it wouldn't be enough, scooped 2 extra ladles, saying, "I didn't weigh it just now, so I added 2 more scoops. The weight is definitely sufficient." Hearing this made Yang Zhao's eyelids twitch. A jin was worth 10 coins, and he had just added nearly 2 jins while acting nonchalant. How extravagant. He thought to himself, but said, "Thank you very much, Brother Huang." Just as Yang Zhao took the MSG and was preparing to leave with the chubby man, Su Sa arrived with 2 men, stating as she entered, "Manager Huang is indeed here. The MSG in the dining hall is almost used up, so I brought people to get some." Su Sa had previously assisted at Fu Lai Lu and always referred to the chubby man as the manager. Now that he had joined the Zhang family, she still hadn't changed how she addressed him. The chubby man replied, "Then feel free to take it, Su Sa." The 2 men behind her each carried a large wooden barrel, which they placed on the ground and began filling it. Yang Zhao couldn't help but count silently. 1 scoop 10 coins, 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3 scoops. The chubby man tugged at the still distracted Yang Zhao, signaling that they could leave. Yang Zhao then came back to his senses, wiped his mouth, and followed the chubby man out. Chapter 80. Xian Yuzhongtong currently resides in Xindu County. Yang Zhao had met him while serving as the county lieutenant there. Now that Yang Zhao's term as county lieutenant had ended and he was left without a position, he had nowhere to go and was temporarily staying with Xian Yuzhongtong. Xian Yuzhongtong was quite the foodie. Upon hearing that Fu Lai Lu had upgraded its dishes, he specifically traveled to the provincial city to taste them, and they left a lasting impression on him. He couldn't forget them, so he sent Yang Zhao to seek a recipe from Zhang Xiaochuan. At this moment, Xian Yuzhongtong was anxious at home, as he felt the possibility of failure was high. Ancient people placed great importance on the secrecy of their skills, and it wasn't merely a matter of how much money was involved. The traditional techniques passed down were considered ancestral and could not be sold, while newly invented techniques were reserved for future generations and also could not be sold. In the end, if a family fell on hard times and had no successors, many techniques were lost throughout history, which was indeed a pity. Just as Xian Yuzhongtong was anxiously waiting, the doorman came to report that Mr. Yang had returned. Xian Yuzhongtong quickly got up to go out and greet him, and he soon heard Yang Zhao's cheerful voice. "Haha, brother Xinyu, I haven't let you down." Hearing this, Xian Yuzhongtong was overjoyed and asked, "Is it done?" "It's done," Yang Zhao replied, taking out a bag and carefully opening it in front of Xian Yuzhongtong. Noticing Yang Zhao's caution, Xian Yuzhongtong also held his breath as he watched Yang Zhao pinch out a small handful of white granules and gently place them in his palm. Then carefully lift one with his fingernail to show Xian Yuzhongtong. Xian Yuzhongtong cautiously took the grain of seasoning that Yang Zhao handed him, and Yang Zhao gestured for him to place it on his tongue. The 2 of them were extremely careful, afraid they might startle the seasoning, their expressions and movements resembling the comical sight of 2 warriors sewing together. After placing the seasoning in his mouth, a strong umami flavor stimulated his taste buds, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "Delicious." Yang Zhao then said, "This is called seasoning, whether stir-frying or steaming. When the food is nearly done, just add a pinch to the pot, and it will make the ingredients incredibly flavorful." "Good, good, good. Brother Yang, you've indeed helped me a lot." As Xian Yuzhongtong spoke, he called for a servant to take some of the seasoning to the kitchen to start cooking, as he was eager to taste it. Just as Xian Yuzhongtong was about to praise Yang Zhao further, he saw Yang Zhao clasp his hands together and seriously say, "I have deceived Brother Xinyu. Please punish me." Xian Yuzhongtong asked in confusion, "Why do you say that, Brother Yang? Although I have brought the seasoning, I did not obtain the method to make it. Therefore, when I said it was done, it was indeed somewhat deceptive. I asked for Brother Xinyu to scold me." Yang Zhao truly lived up to the reputation of a future cunning minister. Originally, not obtaining the recipe while securing the seasoning was a minor flaw. But by first praising and then admitting fault, he effectively maximized the emotional value. Who could blame him? Instead, one would feel grateful for his excellent work. Indeed, upon hearing Yang Zhao's words, Xian Yuzhongtong comforted him. "Brother Yang, you are too humble. You are not putting me in a difficult position. I had no hope for this matter, and now that I have this seasoning to cook with, isn't it wonderful?" Xian Yuzhongtong signaled to a nearby servant, who quickly went out and soon returned with a tray covered in silk cloth. Xian Yuzhongtong, being someone who liked to prepare for various outcomes, had made 2 plans. If it failed, so be it. If it succeeded, he naturally wanted to give a token of thanks. He pointed at the tray and said, "I anticipated that Brother Yang would surely succeed, so I prepared a small token of appreciation for your hard work on my behalf." As he spoke, Xian Yuzhongtong pulled away the silk cloth, revealing 2 shiny gold ingots inside. Yang Zhao's eyes lit up with delight, and he quickly began to decline, saying, "Such a trivial matter. How can I accept a gift from Brother Xinyu? You are truly too generous." Although he said this, his hand had already touched the gold ingots. Xian Yuzhongtong smiled and said, "It is only right. After all, this is not a small matter for me." Yang Zhao placed the ingots down and said, "This time I bought the monosodium glutamate from the Zhang family at a price of 20 coins per pound, which is quite expensive. However, There is nowhere else to find it besides the Zhang family. So I bought 10 pounds and came back to ask Brother Xianyu's opinion. Yang Zhao was indeed quite shrewd, directly increasing the price from 10 to 20 coins, and he also secretly hid the extra pound of monosodium glutamate given by the hefty man. Upon hearing the price of 20 coins per pound, Xianyu Zhongtong acknowledged that it was indeed not cheap, but it was merely a matter of price. In the world of the wealthy, the distinction is not between cheap and expensive, but rather between what can be bought with money and what cannot. He then said, 20 coins per pound is acceptable, but I wonder if it can be purchased continuously and if there is a limit. Yang Zhao recalled the room full of monosodium glutamate and thought there was no limit at all. They didn't even keep accounts for regular usage. However, he couldn't convey this to Xianyu Zhongtong and needed to demonstrate his value. Yang Zhao replied, the young master Zhang agreed to sell me some to taste the flavor out of consideration for my cousin. At first, he was unwilling to sell. But after I insisted several times, he finally sold me 10 pounds. I also inquired indirectly, and it seems that future purchases should be possible. As for the quantity, if Brother Xianyu needs it, I can find a way. Well then, I will rely on you, Yang. Xianyu Zhongtong responded. By the way, Yang Zhao seemed to have just remembered something, and continued, while I was at the Zhang family, the young master heard that Brother Xianyu has a good appetite, and he specifically sent 2 jars of tea to help with digestion. Saying this, he took out a wooden box from behind him, and upon opening it, 2 jars of tea were revealed, neatly placed inside. The jars were made of glass and looked quite elegant, as this item was typically reserved for emperors during the Tang dynasty. Xianyu Zhongtong, being knowledgeable, immediately recognized the glass jars and quickly took them in his hands, examining them with great interest. Seeing that Xianyu Zhongtong was focused on the glass jars, Yang Zhao remarked, Brother Xianyu, the tea inside is specially made. It doesn't require boiling, just steep it in hot water to drink. Xianyu Zhongtong then shifted his focus slightly, but still commented, this tea jar must be the much talked about glass jar that has been in the spotlight recently. It truly is exquisite. I previously thought it was just an exaggeration, but now seeing it exceeds the rumors. He set down the tea jar and instructed his servant to brew the tea as Yang Zhao suggested. As soon as the hot water soaked the tea leaves, the fragrant aroma began to waft through the air. Xianyu Zhongtong lifted the tea and took a gentle sip, the fragrance refreshing his senses. Brother Yang, do you think we can purchase some of this tea next time? Chapter 081. The Brave White Dog in a Courtyard in Shuzhou. A middle-aged man was conversing with a person wearing a conical hat that obscured their face. The middle-aged man asked, have those people entered? The person in the hat replied, yes, they were let in at the midnight hour last night, and are now securely hidden. Please instruct on how to proceed next. No need. Let them sort it out themselves. We shouldn't get too involved. Just keep a close watch on their movements and report back at any time. In the military camp stationed in Shuzhou, a scout reported, General, we have discovered a small group of cavalry infiltrating. The person referred to as the general is Zhang Jingren. In fact, the military system of the Tang dynasty has already been reformed. It is now a mercenary model under the regional military governors. Strictly speaking, Zhang Jingren should now be called the chief military officer, but everyone is still accustomed to calling him general. Zhang Jingren asked casually, oh, a small group of scouts. Can you identify which faction they belong to? The scout replied, they are all in disguise, so it's not clear at the moment, but they should be from various Chong tribes. Tubo. After uttering these 2 words, Zhang Jingren fell into silent contemplation. The Shu region is not far from the Tubo border, and during the autumn harvest, small groups from Tubo often come to raid. However, the timing seems off, making their infiltration intriguing. Once these individuals entered Shu, they lost track, which clearly indicates there was someone assisting them. Send out more scouts. After saying this, Zhang Jingren waved his hand to let the scout leave and sent someone to call the other generals for a meeting. Erlang, things are a bit troubling. Zhao Er has gone missing. Before Mo Tianji arrived, the news had already reached them. As he entered the room, he continued, we were supposed to meet at noon today, but the person sent did not find Zhao Er. Zhang Xiaochuan was momentarily at a loss and thought that since Mo Tianji was professional, he asked, Uncle Mo, what do you think? Mo Tianji analyzed, if nothing unexpected happens, it should be the Liao family preparing to take action, likely tonight or tomorrow. Zhang Xiaochuan agreed, saying, fortunately, we are almost ready. Let's have everyone stop their current tasks today, rest well, and conserve energy to prevent an attack tonight. Mo Tianji dismissively said, there's no need to make a big fuss. We dealt with those minor threats on patrol. Zhang Xiaochuan thought to himself, I know you all are capable, but I'm a bit cautious. It's wise to prepare thoroughly. He then said, Uncle Mo, even when hunting a rabbit, a lion must use all its strength. For safety's sake, let's stick to my plan. Resting a bit won't hurt. Mo Tianji replied, all right, I'll inform them to rest. And we'll also prohibit alcohol for the next couple of days. Yes, Uncle Mo is thoughtful as always. After they made their plans, they went about their tasks. Zhang Xiaochuan went to check on the progress of firearm assembly and ammunition production. When he reached the storage room for the firearm parts, he saw a line at the door, with each person carrying an AK-47. However, their clothing, hairstyles, and the guns were mismatched, indicating that they still needed to produce standardized uniforms. Zhang Xiaochuan asked Teng Yi, why is everyone fully armed? What is the plan? Teng Yi bluntly replied, didn't you tell us to prepare the guns and ammunition before practicing? Now that everything is ready, what do you think we should do? While Teng Yi's statement was accurate, Zhang Xiaochuan felt it was also flawed. He was momentarily speechless, then said, I shouldn't have asked. I'll join you for practice. On the way, Zhang Xiaochuan chatted with Luo Xiaohu again. Currently, a total of 15 firearms had been assembled. Teng Yi and Luo Xiaohu each had one, and 10 others were temporarily selected to form a small team, each receiving one firearm, with Teng Yi leading the team. Zhang Xiaochuan and Mo Tianji each took one of the remaining 3, and he planned to keep the last one for his elder brother. As for the bullets, there are currently only 3,000 rounds, with each gun equipped with 5 magazines, totaling 150 rounds, while the rest are stored in a warehouse as backup. Each person is prepared to shoot 1 magazine during practice. The results of the shooting practice were surprisingly good, although they couldn't reach the 500-meter mark like Teng Yi. They could generally hit the target at 400 meters. Zhang Xiaochuan once doubted whether these individuals had prior shooting experience, but that was clearly impossible. He felt it was related to their martial arts training. As long as one can aim and stabilize their hands while shooting, the chances of hitting the target are quite high. Given that these people could control the entire empire during the Xinlong years, their combat skills were certainly impressive, which meant their hands were steady as well. With a gun in hand, Zhang Xiaochuan naturally wanted to practice, but his hit rate was pitifully low compared to the others. And beyond 300 meters, he had no idea where the bullets were going. After practice, he instructed these individuals to stay at the residence for the next few days. Ready for action, Liao Kuan addressed a man in leather armor before him, saying, Prince Mula, I plan to take action tonight. How prepared are you on your end? The person referred to as Prince Mula was a prince of a tribe, not from the Tubo. He was a robust man, about 178 centimeters tall, with muscles that exuded strength. In a rough voice, he replied, They are just a bunch of unblooded slaves. What is there to prepare? It's as easy as slaughtering pigs and sheep. In Mula's view, the Zhang family's farmers were no different from slaves, as Tubo was still a slave society. He believed that slaves had no combat prowess, merely standing livestock. Liao Kuan initially shared this attitude, but after Liao Bin was beaten by 2 guards from the Zhang family, he began to think that the Zhang family had some depth and should be treated with caution. Prince Mula should not be careless. The people in this village were all retired soldiers, and their combat strength was not to be underestimated. Mula remained dismissive but didn't want to listen to Liao Kuan's nagging, so he turned to the person beside him and said, Jinu, let the head of the Liao family see the strength of our warriors. Yes, replied the person, who then turned to leave. Mula then addressed Liao Kuan, please. At this moment, Jinu had gathered 100 Tubo warriors in the open space outside. Although they were not standing in perfect formation, each stood tall like iron towers, giving off a strong sense of pressure. Mula said to Liao Kuan, although my father is not here, I lead this team, and all those present are the best warriors of our tribe. We will surely assist the head of the Liao family in achieving victory. With that, he waved his hand. In an instant, the 100 men drew their curved blades and, in unison, slapped them against their chests, producing a loud sound that added to their imposing aura. Mula smiled at Liao Kuan and asked, what do you think? At the moment the blades were drawn, Liao Kuan was also taken aback. It seemed that these fierce warriors were indeed formidable. In comparison, his own household guards were indeed lacking, which put him at ease. That night, under the cover of darkness, which was quite suitable for stealthy actions, Liao Bin and Mula, along with approximately 200 others, made no attempt to conceal themselves and marched boldly towards the Zhang family, aiming for a swift resolution. Chapter 082, The Quick Gun Beyond 7 Steps Report. General, that group has appeared. Zhang Jingren quickly asked where. The scout continued. They have appeared in the Liao family of Beima Township and are currently rushing towards the Zhang family. Upon hearing this, Zhang Jingren shouted, not good. He then said, prepare the horses and send the order. The left cavalry battalion will strike with me. The right cavalry and the infantry on both sides will block the main road. The Liao family is adjacent to the Zhang family, and a fast horse can reach there in no time. At this moment, Zhang Jingren was anxious, fearing that if the village was not on guard, an ambush could succeed. And by the time he arrived, it would be too late for his wife and brother. In the silent night, he heard a rapid sound of hooves. And the closer he got to the village, the more worried Zhang Jingren became, spurring his horse harder, hoping to go even faster. As he approached the village, he saw lights in the distance, but there were no sounds of fighting. Zhang Jingren exclaimed in distress, thinking, it's over. They must have finished the massacre and are now cleaning up the battlefield. While shouting, he rushed into the village. Chiner, Xiaochuan, I'm coming. Zhang Jingren stumbled into the small courtyard, but the scene before him made him stop mid-sentence. He was momentarily stunned, seeing Zhang Xiaochuan wielding a whip and striking it heavily on Teng Yi, cursing, bastard, give me back my gun. The commotion attracted Zhang Jingren and his group. And at that moment, Zhang Xiaochuan noticed them. He turned to Mo Tianji and said, lock this bastard up, no meat for 7 days. At first, Teng Yi remained expressionless as he was hit, but upon hearing the no meat for 7 days, his face immediately fell, and he quickly begged for mercy. Erlang, how about you hit me a few more times, just don't deny me meat. Zhang Xiaochuan, realizing that Teng Yi was afraid of that, replied, this time it's 7 days of punishment, next time if you offend again, it'll be a month without meat, and also, begging for mercy will add 3 more days. Teng Yi hurriedly shut up, fearing that he would end up with 3 more days without meat. Once Zhang Jingren saw they were done talking, he hurriedly asked, what is going on here? Why are you not sleeping at this hour and dealing with Teng Yi? Did any thieves come to the village? Zhang Xiaochuan angrily looked at Teng Yi, who was being held by Luo Xiaohu, and said, "Thieves? There are no thieves at all. It's clearly a bunch of targets. All thanks to Teng Yi's good work." Seeing Zhang Xiaochuan still fuming, Mo Tianji chuckled and shook his head, continuing from Zhang Xiaochuan's words. There was indeed a group of thieves that came, but they have all been dealt with. Dealt with? An hour ago, Liao Kuan explained. After breaking into the Zhang family, they captured Zhang Xiaochuan and killed everyone else they encountered, aiming for a quick resolution before their trail was exposed. Prince Mula asked, "How to identify who is Zhang Xiaochuan?" "Zhang Xiaochuan is young, while the others are older. Keep the young one and kill the rest." Mula said, "Since it's easy to identify, then it's simple." Seeing that preparations were complete, Liao Kuan waved his hand. "Let us go." In fact, as long as they entered the Zhang family and stole the formula for glass, that would suffice, at most. They would just abduct Zhang Xiaochuan. However, Liao Kuan had dark intentions, wanting to use this opportunity to wipe out the Zhang family completely, with the blame naturally falling on the Tibetan people afterward. Prince Mula did not care about these matters, as long as this task was accomplished. The tribe's salt and iron for the second half of the year would be secured, which was what he truly needed. As for killing a few Han people, he felt no pressure at all. However, just after Liao Kuan and Mu La set off, their whereabouts had already been discovered, though they were still unaware of it. Particularly, the Tibetan people became excited along the way as they were about to carry out a massacre, with Mu La being the most exhilarated. As this was his first battle since becoming an adult, Mu La thought he must take back a few heads to show his usual mockers that he too was a warrior who had experienced killing. Liao Kuan, on the other hand, was quite cunning, hanging back in the group, claiming to be covering the rear. But it wasn't a retreat, so what was the point of covering the rear? However, Prince Mu La didn't mind. He merely looked down on Liao Kuan as a coward. Sunda had a rougher time, as he was assigned by Liao Kuan to follow Prince Mu La as a guide, being at the very front of the entire group. A minute after Liao Kuan and the others set off, a cry of an eagle broke through the night sky, followed by a dark figure rushing into Zhangjia village. Without resting, Mo Tianji immediately leaped out and emitted a series of bird calls, signaling for assembly. Inside the estate, Zhang Xiaochuan was still fast asleep. Luo Xiaohu said, "The thieves are attacking. I'll go wake Erlang." Teng Yi grabbed Luo Xiaohu and said, "What nonsense. If you wake him, aren't you putting him in danger? Now that we have this powerful weapon, we should take advantage of him being asleep to eliminate the threat." Upon hearing this, Luo Xiaohu agreed it made sense. Teng Yi quickly assembled the AK team, as these people were under his command. The deployment had already been planned during the day for how to respond when the thieves came. So at this moment, Teng Yi directly gathered them to set off. It sounds long, but only a minute had passed as a group of 12 headed towards the faint sound of hoofbeats. Prince Mula was already in sight of Zhang's house. "Good, give the order, light the torches." After the command was issued, the horses slowed down. And soon the torches were lit one after another, resembling a fire dragon dancing wildly in the night. In an instant, the fire dragon reached the village front. Prince Mula shouted, "Draw your swords." Swish, swish, swish. A flurry of sword drawing sounds followed. Prince Mula shouted again, "Scatter." Bang. A gunshot shattered the silence. Prince Mula intended to shout for them to spread out and surround the village, with half of the people surrounding it and the other half carrying out the massacre. Unfortunately, he only managed to shout one word before everything froze at that moment. As Prince Mula fell from his horse, the group momentarily came to a halt. Then, from the darkness came a voice, "Free fire, 5 rounds." Bang, bang, bang. With each gunshot, a person fell from their horse, bullets flying in from all directions. Panic ensued as everyone ran without knowing where to go, unsure of how to hide, standing frozen in place. Fortunately, the round of shooting ended quickly, accompanied by the silence of dozens of lives. At this moment, someone shouted, "Dismount, cover your heads and crouch down." Immediately, they dismounted and crouched down, while others, in a state of fear and confusion, saw someone take action and followed suit. Although everyone didn't know why they were doing this, they could roughly guess it was a sign of surrender. The Tibetan people, though not understanding the words, could see what was happening and also dismounted, covering their heads and crouching down. "Zhao Air, you bastard, was that you shouting? I haven't had my fill of killing yet. For so many years. My weapon has long been eager and restless." The speaker is Teng Yi, who slowly steps out of the darkness, his gait steady and expression cold, like a reaper emerging from the shadows. He holds a gun in both hands, the dark muzzle aimed at the crouching crowd. Just as Teng Yi is about to speak again, a sudden change occurs. Among the crouching individuals, one person springs up violently, aiming a curved knife at Teng Yi's vital points. Teng Yi, however, remains unhurried. Only when the attacker is close does he point the gun at him and gently pull the trigger. The assailant is shot through, and the powerful impact not only halts the advance, but also sends him tumbling backward. Teng Yi raises the gun, lightly blows on the muzzle, and arrogantly proclaims, "The gun is fast beyond 7 steps, and within 7 steps, it is both fast and accurate." Chapter 083. Teng Yi. "You big fool." Just as Teng Yi finishes his boast, an unexpected change occurs. This time, Teng Yi doesn't evade. A large foot kicks him solidly in the rear. Unfortunately, the force is too weak, causing him to sway slightly, but not fall. "No wonder I was kicked. There was no killing intent." Teng Yi turns his head to Zhang Xiaochuan, who kicked him. Zhang Xiaochuan is nearly furious. Tung Yi's series of ostentatious actions were done while Zhang Xiaochuan was showing off during shooting practice, making everyone laugh at him. Who would have thought that at this moment Tung Yi would use them without reservation? Zhang Xiaochuan's anger rises, and he curses, I didn't expect you, Tung Yi, to seem so honest but actually be such a big fool. Tung Yi can only scratch his head and laugh foolishly. At that moment, Mo Tianji arrives, pats Zhang Xiaochuan, who is ready to continue, and says, first, deal with these people in front of us, then take care of him. Zhang Xiaochuan knows that handling the thieves in front of them is the priority, so he nods at Mo Tianji, points at Tung Yi, and gestures with a throat-cutting motion as a threat. Mo Tianji immediately issues orders. A team takes the captives away to be locked up, and fortunately, the dungeon is large enough to accommodate them for now. Another group ties up the horses in the stable, while a few remain to handle the bodies, making them appear as though they died from knife wounds. Indeed, as a professional assassination organization, within a quarter of an hour, the scene is cleaned up. If it weren't for the lingering smell of gunpowder and blood in the air, one wouldn't believe that a battle had taken place just moments ago. People are in the dungeon, horses in the stable, bodies behind the manor, and weapons in the warehouse. That's roughly the situation. Mo Tianji states. Zhang Jingren can't help but feel uneasy. What does that's the situation mean? These are people from the neighboring region, which can be called cross-border harassment on a small scale. Or on a larger scale, it's a war between nations. You handled it so lightly, and the weapons are already stored away. Should I pretend not to know, or really not know? Of course, given Zhang Jingren's nature, he cannot pretend not to know. So he says, all captives, bodies, and confiscated items will be handed over to me for custody. At dawn, I will arrange for people to take them away. It seems like he suddenly remembered something, and said, although killing these people counts as military merit, the people in the village should not have such merits. When I report this, I will say it was my subordinates who did it, and I hope you won't hold a grudge. Mo Tianji had no objections, and was about to agree when Zhang Xiaochuan jumped out. Big brother, are you talking nonsense? Regardless of anything else, you can't take a single horse away. Upon hearing Zhang Xiaochuan's unreasonable behavior, Zhang Jingren took out his authority as the elder brother and said, don't be ridiculous. Do you know that these spoils need to be reported? How can I sacrifice public interest for personal gain? Haha. Zhang Xiaochuan laughed, and he laughed loudly. Big brother, don't you find this ridiculous? Don't talk to me about loyalty and patriotism. If a person doesn't act for themselves, heaven will punish them. If you truly cared about loyalty and patriotism, you should bind us all now and then tie your own hands to ask for the emperor's judgment. Zhang Jingren didn't expect his younger brother to be so sharp-tongued, and he was momentarily embarrassed. Indeed, just by being alive, he was already acting out of personal interest. So how could he talk about public spirit? He sighed and said, but this is ill-gotten wealth. Erlang, you shouldn't covet it. Zhang Xiaochuan argued, I do covet it. This is something that the brothers in the village fought for with their lives. Big brother, how can you have the face to take it away? Mo Tianji turned his head away, thinking, where did this bloodbath come from? Zhang Jingren was also speechless. His brother was talking nonsense over a few horses, disregarding all shame. So he said, these are all fallacies, stop talking. I will take the items tomorrow as they are. Zhang Xiaochuan couldn't give up just like that. These horses represented efficiency. Money didn't matter much, but having these horses would significantly improve their transportation efficiency. In fact, Zhang Jingren also had selfish motives. If these horses were brought back to the military camp, they could quickly form a cavalry unit. Otherwise, why would he stubbornly refuse to let go? Zhang Xiaochuan had to make one last attempt. If it didn't work, he would have to think of another way. Big brother, you must understand that our danger hasn't been lifted yet. If something happens one day, do you plan to let me and sister-in-law run away on foot? If it comes to that, you can keep half of them. Even Zhang Xiaochuan himself didn't realize how cunning he was becoming, always targeting others' weaknesses. This time, his brother didn't retort, but fell into thought. At that moment, Uncle Fu came over. Erlang, Zhao Er wants to see you. Zhang Xiaochuan replied, oh, let him come over. As Zhao Er walked over, he was already flattering. Young master, it was truly like a divine army just now. With a few loud bangs, many fell down. Zhang Xiaochuan waved his hand to interrupt. All right, get to the point. Zhao Er, interrupted midway through his flattery, stammered. Oh, the point. By the way, it seems Liao Kuan isn't among the captives. What? Liao Kuan came tonight too? Yes. Zhao Er awkwardly continued. I had been keeping an eye on Liao Kuan, worried he would run away halfway. Who knew that young master's divine weapon made such a huge impact that I lost focus for a moment. And when I came to my senses, Liao Kuan was already gone. Zhang Xiaochuan felt that Liao Kuan must have run back, so he said, we can't let him escape. Uncle Mo, quickly send someone to the Liao family. No, if he returns to the Liao family, he will definitely be caught. I have already sent people to block the Liao family, said Zhang Jingren. Since the Liao family had been sealed off, there was no need to send more people. Zhang Xiaochuan continued to speak to Zhao Er. Tell me about the details of tonight's night raid. Although Zhao Er had already pledged allegiance to Zhang Xiaochuan, he still felt embarrassed when he heard the term night raid. This was clearly just a delivery of experience and equipment. As for the details, Zhao Er blushed even more because he knew very little. After hesitating for a while, Zhao Er finally said, I am not very clear about the details. But the steward Sunda is the most trusted person of Liao Kuan, and he has been involved in all the bad deeds, so he should know everything. Seeing that Zhao Er knew so little, Zhang Xiaochuan let Uncle Fu take him to settle down first. After Zhao Er left, Dr. Yin arrived. Although Dr. Yin was skilled in medicine, he was still one of the leaders of the Plum Blossom Inner Guard. He had just finished a round of interrogations and was here to report the results. It must be said that the efficiency of the interrogation was quite high. In just half an hour, they had clarified the details. It turned out that Liao Kuan coveted the Zhang family's glass formula. Initially, he conspired with the Huang family but failed, so he colluded with the White Dog tribe from the Tibetan region to directly raid the Zhang family. He promised them salt and iron supplies upon success, and the White Dog tribe sent 100 warriors to assist. The key was that Liao Kuan also planned to take this opportunity to slaughter the Zhang family. Upon hearing this, everyone was furious and condemned Liao Kuan's wickedness. Chapter 084. You want to occupy the White Dog Nation. When Zhang Xiaochuan heard that Liao Kuan planned to slaughter the Zhang family, he jumped up and said, "Big brother, didn't you surround the Liao family? We can take advantage of the night to lead our troops in and wipe out the Liao family in the chaos to vent our anger." Mo Tianji, eager to try, said, "I think it will work. We just need to bring a few dozen men, and we can wipe them out in an hour." Zhang Jingren frowned and stopped him, saying, "What are you talking about? Uncle Mo, why are you following Xiaochuan's nonsense? The Liao family has colluded with foreign powers, and we will report it to the regional governor tomorrow. The court will handle it." Zhang Xiaochuan curiously asked, "What will happen to them?" As for the crime of colluding with foreign powers, soldiers, especially generals, were naturally well aware. Zhang Jingren directly said, "Those who collude with foreign powers should be executed, their property confiscated, and their relatives demoted to low status or exiled." Confiscated property? Zhang Xiaochuan repeated, then incoherently said to Uncle Fu, "Uncle Fu, prepare 5,000 strings of cash for me tonight. I will need it first thing tomorrow." Zhang Jingren was too lazy to care about his increasingly incomprehensible younger brother. He had to deal with the aftermath of the situation and report it overnight, including searching for any potential loose ends. So after greeting Chao Qing, he returned to the military camp. After Zhang Jingren left, Mo Tianji said to Zhang Xiaochuan, "Do you know who is leading the White Dog tribe?" Although Zhang Xiaochuan was too lazy to engage in Mo Tianji's pretentiousness, he thought it was best to follow the conversation to avoid unnecessary detours, so he cooperatively asked, "Who?" "It's the prince of the White Dog tribe, named Mula." Mo Tianji indeed knew this, as he continued, "His father is a very difficult person, and now you have killed his son." "Wait, what do you mean I killed his son? That was done by Teng Yi." Zhang Xiaochuan strongly protested, claiming it was an obvious frame-up. Mo Tianji seemed to anticipate Zhang Xiaochuan's response and calmly explained, "To outsiders, we are all your servants. So what Teng Yi did is equivalent to what you did." Zhang Xiaochuan wanted to retort that they were not his servants, but it was clearly meaningless. It was as if all these lives counted against him. Mo Tianji continued, "This person is like a mad dog. Once provoked, he will do everything possible to seek revenge." Zhang Xiaochuan felt frustrated. If such a madman had it in for him, it would be disastrous. He then said, "Does that mean it won't be safe to go out in the future?" Mo Tianji nodded and said, "Yes, but can you stop pausing? It seems ancient people couldn't speak without circling around." Zhang Xiaochuan helplessly cooperated. "But what?" Mo Tianji replied, "But these people from the region are rather aggressive, valuing brute force above all else. If we can subdue them, then there won't be any problems, and they will obediently recognize you as their leader." Zhang Xiaochuan, feeling downcast, said, "Don't mess with me. It's a nation now. How many people does a tribe have? How can I subdue them?" Mo Tianji looked disdainful and said, "They claim to be a nation, but it's actually only about 20 to 30,000 people. Moreover, we don't need to subdue everyone. Just intimidating the leaders will suffice. It wouldn't have worked before, but I think a small squad of 100 armed with advanced weaponry could do the trick." Zhang Xiaochuan understood Mo Tianji's deeper meaning. It was about taking over the territory of the White Dog tribe. Although it was a grand ambition, it was also understandable, given that this group was facing severe consequences. Securing some territory as a backup plan was quite sensible. Zhang Xiaochuan thought about how they had traveled back to ancient times, where there was no concept of human rights or sovereignty. If they could seize land by force, why not? Realizing this, Zhang Xiaochuan said, "So you mean to go all out and claim the land, taking over the White Dog Kingdom?" Mo Tianji was startled and quickly covered Zhang Xiaochuan's mouth, exclaiming in terror, "What are you saying? That's outright rebellion. How can you face your ancestors?" Zhang Xiaochuan was a bit confused. "What do you mean then?" Mo Tianji, equally perplexed, said, "I mean just take a group to give the White Dog Kingdom a good beating to intimidate them, so they don't come and bother us." Wow. After all that, it was just a literal meaning. Zhang Xiaochuan suddenly lost interest, but this conversation planted a seed in his mind. Thinking about how he had important matters to attend to the next day, he decided to rest. He then told Mo Tianji, "I have important things to do tomorrow. I'm heading to sleep now." Halfway out, he added, "Leave half the horses. We can't afford to lose even one." Mo Tianji shrugged and left as well. Early the next morning, Zhang Xiaochuan set off with a group and 5,000 pieces of silver toward the Liao family. The results have not yet reached the Liao family, and from a distance, two groups of people were seen confronting each other at the entrance. One side was naturally the soldiers of Zhang Jingren, while the other consisted of the officials from the local government, who were clearly at a disadvantage due to their small numbers. Zhang Xiaochuan spotted the leader of the officials from afar. It was none other than Zhou Pingyan. He decided to intervene without caring about the reason for the argument. "Oh, isn't this the local official? What a coincidence." Zhou Pengyan felt annoyed upon seeing Zhang Xiaochuan. This kid was too bothersome and had no sense of propriety. He could really get on one's nerves. So, he pretended not to hear and turned his head away to ignore him. However, one of the people arguing with Zhou Pengyan stepped forward to greet him. I am Bao Bo. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Zhang Xiaochuan was taken aback. Bob. Your name is Bob? Bao Bo noticed that Zhang Xiaochuan was intrigued by his name. So he explained, yes, I am Bao Bo, the Bao from the saying about friendship. And Bo means profound and vast. Realizing he might be overreacting, Zhang Xiaochuan muttered, I was actually going to ask where your Deadpool is. Bao Bo looked confused and asked, what? Nothing. What are you all doing here? Bao Bo replied, I have been ordered to seal off the Liao family and not allow anyone to enter or exit. The officials from the government insist on entering the residence, which is why there's a dispute. Zhang Xiaochuan nodded, I see. They are indeed in the wrong for disregarding military orders and attempting to intrude. It must be tough for you, General Bao, but don't worry, I will support you. Bao Bo had only greeted Zhang Xiaochuan out of politeness, but hearing his words was concerning. Sure enough, Zhang Xiaochuan continued, I signed a contract with the Liao family earlier, and I need to go in for the transaction. I have the money right here. He pointed to the ox cart behind him and added, so I'll just take a look inside first. Bao Bo raised his hand firmly, no way. Zhang Xiaochuan knew without thinking that his brother's subordinates were just as stubborn. It was impossible to enter the Liao family without an order from his brother, so he reluctantly stepped aside to think of a way. Zhou Pengyan found Zhang Xiaochuan's predicament amusing and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Zhang Xiaochuan disdainfully said, what's so funny? You can't get in either. Zhou Pengyan's anger flared up instantly, and he gritted his teeth, spitting out a word. Forget it. I won't hold it against you. He then turned to his attendant and said, go check if Master Shi has returned. Just as the attendant was about to mount a horse, a group of people appeared in the distance, led by Zhang Jingren, followed closely by the Master Shi Zhou Pengyan had mentioned. As Zhang Jingren approached, he spoke before Zhou Pengyan could say anything. Local official, I have already explained to Master Shi on the way here that Liao Kuan is involved in treason, so this matter should be handled by the military. I have reported it to the governor, so I ask you to return. Zhou Pengyan thought of Liao Kuan, who was still hiding in his backyard, hoping he could bring his family to the local government's prison to find an opportunity to rescue them. However, given the current situation, it seemed unlikely. Currently, we can only go back to discuss with the local governor and see if we can take over the case involving Liao Kuan. This week, Peng Yan is preparing to leave. Who would have thought that Zhang Xiaochuan would jump in at this moment? Brother, I don't care how you handle the Liao family, but the property of the Liao family, including this residence, now belongs to me. I need to find the Liao family to finalize the property transfer, so let me in. Zhang Jingren felt a headache upon seeing Zhang Xiaochuan. His younger brother was sharp-tongued and full of twisted logic, and he found it hard to argue back. He had no choice but to assert his authority as an elder brother. Xiaochuan, don't be ridiculous. This is not your home. The Liao family's property is to be confiscated. How can it be yours? Zhang Xiaochuan understood that he needed to approach the matter formally. Brother, I'm not speaking as your younger brother in this case. I have a contract with Liao Kuan. There are laws for officials and private agreements for the people. I have reached an agreement with Liao Kuan, so if you refuse without asking for the details, it's you who are disregarding the law. Zhang Jingren slapped his forehead. His brother was indeed sharp, and what he said had some merit. They had a contract, and it couldn't be dismissed simply because one party had committed a crime. Zhang Jingren had no choice but to say, then show me this contract. If there is no problem, I can agree to it. Zhang Xiaochuan did not present the contract, but retorted, brother, this is where you're wrong. We are brothers after all, and you should avoid any conflicts of interest. How can you personally verify this? If he weren't his brother, Zhang Jingren would have wanted to cut him off. You still have a point, he thought. Feeling frustrated but unable to vent his anger since his brother was making a valid argument, he darkened his face and asked, so what do you want? It's simple. Isn't there a suitable person here? We can ask the local magistrate to verify its authenticity for a judgment. After all, the magistrate oversees local civil affairs, which is in line with the law. Zhang Jingren knew Zhang Xiaochuan was right, but he felt a heavy pressure in his chest. He decided to let Peng Yan deal with the hassle and said, that makes sense. Magistrate, what do you think? After all, the chances of transferring the Liao family's case to himself were slim, and Peng Yan was currently troubled about how to continue meddling in the Liao family's affairs, looking for opportunities to take the Liao family members away. The two brothers had handed him an opportunity, so he quickly agreed. Let me handle it, but whatever the outcome, it must be followed and cannot be disorderly. Clearly, he was giving a warning to Zhang Xiaochuan. Zhang Xiaochuan replied, no problem. But you must judge fairly according to the law. Peng Yan scoffed. Do you need to remind me of that? Since he agreed, Zhang Xiaochuan said no more and directly took out a stack of densely written papers, saying, this is the contract. It states that all the land from the west of the Liao family's canal to the middle of the White Pagoda Lake is sold to me for 5,000 guan. Peng Yan took the contract but was stunned by Zhang Xiaochuan's words before he could even read it. Is this a sales contract? This is outright robbery. The Liao family has nearly 10,000 mu of land in this area, and you're buying it for just 5,000 guan? Who would believe that? However, he knew it was not the time to lose his temper, so he decided to read the contract before reacting. Zhou Pengyan and Liao Kuan at the time shared the same feelings upon seeing the contract. Just reading the first line made them want to curse. The contract began with the phrase about the principles of fairness and justice, stating that both parties had reached the following agreement based on equality, voluntariness, and honesty after sufficient friendly negotiation. I can't believe this nonsense, Zhou thought. 5,000 guan for 10,000 mu of land, and they call it equal and voluntary? No fool would believe that. He wanted to read on, but found the text overwhelming, with several thousand characters on a single page, and quickly flipped through it, discovering it was a full 38 pages long, totaling nearly 100,000 words. Lacking the energy to read it all slowly, and knowing that nitpicking didn't necessarily require reading the entire content, he began to look for faults. I wonder with whom this contract was signed, and who was providing the guarantee. It was a clear matter that didn't need to be asked, and the old man had nothing to say. Zhang Xiaochuan, impatient, replied. Naturally, it was signed with Liao Kuan, and there's no one providing a guarantee. What is the issue? Zhou Pingyan replied calmly. Since it was signed with Liao Kuan and there's no guarantee, he cannot fulfill the contract if he is not present. So this contract can only be addressed when Liao Kuan arrives. Liao Kuan was currently on the run and had yet to be found. In ancient times, without surveillance, one could easily hide in the deep mountains and forests, making it extremely difficult to locate him. Zhou Pingyan's comment was a tactic to stall and avoid letting Zhang Xiaochuan proceed with the delivery. It remained to be seen how the Zhang family would respond. Zhou guessed that the Zhang family, having no other options, would propose a deal, suggesting they could take Liao's family members away to achieve their goals. However, they would have to make the proposal first, and Zhou needed to guide them to state their desired terms. As Zhou pondered whether Zhang Xiaochuan would act stubbornly or plead, Zhang spoke up. I see you haven't read the contract thoroughly. The first clause of Chapter 11 states that if Party B, which is Liao Kuan, cannot be present for the handover, his parents, wife, children, brothers, uncles, or cousins can represent him. In ancient times, it was often said that one could be punished along with their 9 clans, and Zhang had included all these relatives in the contract. In short, as long as there was a blood relative with the surname Liao, they could act on his behalf. He added, if all relatives are deceased, the government can carry out the handover. Zhou Pingyan quickly flipped through the contract and indeed found the same content as Zhang had mentioned. He cursed Zhang in his heart for being so cunning. He had considered this as well. Since one tactic failed, Zhou came up with another and said, with so much content, how do we know you haven't made any changes? Zhang Xiaochuan smiled knowingly, anticipating Zhou's response. What do you see at the bottom of each page? Zhou looked and saw smaller text indicating, total of 38 pages, page 30. He was taken aback. This had all been considered. The contract was quite meticulous. But he was not just a decoration, so he immediately raised a new question. So what? You could still replace the paper. Replace the paper? You must be joking. Zhang replied. Zhou, annoyed, retorted. How dare you speak so disrespectfully? I was just stating a fact. Look at this, Zhang said, and he neatly organized the contract papers, gently rubbing them to arrange the pages in a stepped manner. Now looking closely, several clear seals could be seen, prominently displaying the counter seal, Liao Kuan's seal, and Zhang Xiaochuan's seal. Zhou Pingyan opened his mouth as if to speak, but Zhang Xiaochuan spoke up first. Are you suggesting that this contract might be forged by me? Look at the first and last pages of this contract. They both have seals, handwritten signatures, and fingerprints. Any one of these can be verified for authenticity. I wonder if the local official needs to verify it. Zhou Pingyan opened his mouth again, but couldn't find the words. It seemed questioning the authenticity of the contract was no longer an option, so he could only examine the contract closely to find any errors. Seeing Zhou Pingyan return to scrutinize the contract, Zhang Xiaochuan remained calm and waited patiently. He recalled his past life as a technical representative in a company, where contracts could take weeks to review and be revised dozens of times, so he had the patience for this. However, the more Zhou Pingyan read, the more alarmed he became. Was this a contract or an encyclopedia? It even detailed whether there were crops on the land during the handover and how to allocate them. Just then, Zhou Pingyan noticed a clause stating that the second party was given 1 month from the date of signing the contract to handle follow-up matters, with the delivery to take place a month later. Zhou Pingyan immediately jumped up and exclaimed, "Look at this." Zhang Xiaochuan understood immediately that Zhou Pingyan was implying he had prematurely delivered, which was against the rules. However, the contract had only been signed a few days ago, and according to the agreement, delivery was to occur a month later. By then, the land might have been confiscated, making it difficult to reclaim it from the authorities. To Zhou Pingyan's surprise, Zhang Xiaochuan sneered, "You haven't finished reading, have you?" Zhou Pingyan's heart sank. Could it be that there were remedial clauses? As he pondered this, Zhang Xiaochuan took the contract, flipped through a couple of pages, and pointed to a clause, saying, "Look here." Zhou Pingyan glanced at it and broke into a cold sweat. They even thought of this. The contract stated, if the second party encounters the following situations, the first party can immediately enforce delivery. This includes, but is not limited to, the second party reselling the subject matter to others, criminal confiscation, asset transfer, and other events affecting the fulfillment of the contract. Zhou Pingyan felt utterly helpless and could only concede to the contract. He then asked Zhang Jingren for his opinion. Initially, Zhang Jingren was neutral, as it was his brother who stood to gain, so he naturally had no objections. Thus, Zhang Xiaochuan, Zhang Jingren, and Zhou Pingyan went to the Liao family, demanding the land contract. Zhang Xiaochuan presented the promised 5,000 guan. As for the Liao family, their assets were confiscated, and all related individuals were taken to the military camp for detention. However, The military governor ultimately transferred the case to the local official for handling. But that is a story for another time. Zhang Xiaochuan's older brother returned to the Zhang family with him, looking troubled during dinner. Zhang Xiaochuan asked, "Isn't the matter of the Liao family colluding with enemies already settled? What else is bothering you?" Zhang Jingren initially didn't want to speak, but then thought that since his brother was so resourceful now, he might have a good solution. So he shared the matter. It turned out that this issue was related to the refugees Zhang Xiaochuan had seen a few days earlier when he purchased area. Because of the heavy summer rains in the Xiangzhou area, a large number of seedlings had drowned, and with the autumn harvest approaching, the people, unable to pay taxes, had no choice but to abandon their lands and become refugees. Some of the displaced people have been received by the local counties along the way, while others have fled to a certain region. Currently, there are approximately over 10,000 displaced individuals in these two regions, which is quite a lot, considering that a county in the current dynasty has only a few 100,000 people. The current approach toward the displaced is either to encourage them to return to their original homes or to resettle them locally, allowing them to cultivate the land as their permanent fields. Most of these individuals choose local resettlement since returning would mean no land to go back to, as it has long been taken over by local elites. Otherwise, who would become displaced? Local resettlement allows them to avoid taxes and labor for several years due to the need for land reclamation, giving them hope for a better life. Of course, for young and strong individuals, there is a third option, to join the military, which not only provides a salary but also reduces their family's taxes. Since military and political affairs are managed by local governors, the main issue for the elder brother is that the governor has entrusted him with handling the resettlement of the displaced. Zhang Xiaochuan asked, "What's there to worry about? For those who want to return, just give them a certificate to go back. For those who don't want to return, just resettle them locally." Zhang Jingren sighed. The problem is, no one wants to go back. There haven't been any major military conflicts in recent years, and the barracks are fully staffed. So these people can only be resettled locally. Zhang Xiaochuan, puzzled, replied, "Isn't local resettlement supposed to provide uncultivated land for reclamation? Just arrange for them to reclaim it. What's there to worry about?" Zhang Jingren looked at his younger brother oddly. Sometimes he was astoundingly clever, and other times, quite foolish. He explained, "The issue is, where is there land available for reclamation? The local government only provides completely barren land, which is very difficult to cultivate. Essentially, to resettle these people, we need to find them land, which is why I'm troubled." Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaochuan understood. If there were large areas of easily cultivable land, it would have been reclaimed long ago, and the displaced wouldn't have needed to flee. However, this didn't stump Zhang Xiaochuan. He thought, since he now needs land and labor, receiving both the barren land and the people would solve the problem. So he said, "Elder brother, this is not difficult. Just leave it to me, and I promise to handle it beautifully." Zhang Jingren was somewhat skeptical but had no better options, so he could only rely on his younger brother. In a courtyard in a certain region, Liao Kuan asked, "Governor Zhou, what do you say?" Zhou Pingyan, in a fit of rage, responded, "What do you mean? What can I say? Why didn't you mention the contract with that boy earlier?" Liao Kuan knew that concealing the contract was intentional, as with the level of detail in that contract. Even a new emperor wouldn't gain an advantage if reason were applied, so he could never have mentioned it to Zhou Pengyan from the start. However, he couldn't directly admit it, so he said, "I was indeed careless. Who would have thought that a minor contract could hinder a regional governor? I thought it would be void." The implication was that a governor couldn't even handle a child, and yet was concerned about contracts. Zhou Pingyan felt like he wanted to stab Liao Kuan to end it all, but unfortunately, that wasn't feasible, as he held a lot of evidence and could easily retaliate. The governor also spoke sharply. "It's easy to say. Do you think he is just an ordinary child? Behind him is Zhang Jingren. Moreover, I still can't understand how you could sign such a contract." Liao Kuan was caught off guard and could only awkwardly say, "It's just that some accounts were taken by that young boy, and he is using them to threaten me." Upon hearing this, the magistrate Zhou was quite alarmed and angrily replied, You actually let that young boy grasp a handle on you, and now you want me to provoke those two brothers? What if it leads to serious trouble? Can you bear the consequences?" "Don't worry. Those two brothers are not the kind of people who would go to extremes. It's just that I'm in a dire situation this time, and I don't know how Magistrate Zhou plans to assist me." "Assist you?" Magistrate Zhou repeated, seemingly in thought, then said, "Right now, the situation is quite tense, and there may be nowhere for you to hide in this vast land. The only option left is to head west." Chapter 87. Dare not disregard my county magistrate's authority. Greetings, Sir Bai. It turned out to be Zhang Erlang, who was invited inside. The speaker was Shirtai, the deputy of the Shuzhou magistrate's office, who invited Zhang Xiaochuan to take a seat and continued, "I wonder what brings you here today, Erlang, and what guidance you have." "Guidance? I wouldn't dare to say so. I'm here to discuss the settlement of the displaced people." Zhang Xiaochuan went straight to the point. Shirtai, slightly surprised, said, "Isn't this something that should be handled by County Magistrate Zhang? I fear that you. Since I've come, I represent my elder brother fully. Let's discuss the settlement matter." Shirtai thought it over and realized that this hot potato should be dealt with quickly. Being overly cautious would be against his own interests. He then said, "I wonder what strategies you have in mind." Zhang Xiaochuan did not hold back and responded directly, "There's no strategy to speak of. Since we need to settle them, we need land, so I specifically came to ask Deputy Shir for land." Upon hearing the request for land, Shirtai knew that this matter would likely end up in a dispute, and it would probably come to nothing. So he didn't want to waste more words and refused, saying, Erlang, there really is no land available. County Magistrate Zhang should have mentioned this to you. Zhang Xiaochuan realized that Shi Tai misunderstood him and explained, Deputy Shi might have misunderstood. According to the policy, settling the displaced people requires providing wasteland for cultivation. What do you mean by there being none? Erlang should understand. It's not that we can't provide it, but currently, wastelands are difficult to cultivate. And we simply cannot offer land that can be turned into arable fields. Shi Tai's words were sincere and did not seem insincere. In fact, Zhang Xiaochuan also knew that the reason for this small talk was to set the stage for what would come next. Zhang Xiaochuan said, I can understand that. Since there is no easily cultivable wasteland, other options would also be acceptable. Shi Tai immediately responded, that's what you said. Yes, I did say that. But if I'm to take this difficult to cultivate wasteland, shouldn't there be some conveniences provided? Shi Tai understood it wouldn't be that simple and asked, what kind of conveniences are you looking for? Zhang Xiaochuan held up 2 fingers and said, 2 conditions. First, I want to choose the location of this wasteland. I want the area west and north of White Pagoda Lake. Shi Tai nodded, that is acceptable. Secondly, I want double the area of wasteland. This group of 10,000 people includes men and women, old and young, and we can expect about 100,000 acres of farmland. So you need to provide me with 200,000 acres. At this point, Shi Tai showed a troubled expression and said, I can agree to your conditions. But you must understand that once the land is given to you, you will need to register over 3,000 households. And the following year you must start paying basic rents, with all taxes due 3 years later. Zhang Xiaochuan replied, I understand this. Shi Taixin said, you don't know anything. With your plan, in less than a year, they will all become refugees again. By then, the responsibility will fall on me and your elder brother. It was clear that this guy was just being impulsive. There was no point in discussing anything with him. Thinking of this, Shi Taixin wanted to send him away and said, since Erlang knows, don't joke about this matter. I have official duties to attend to, so I won't see you out. Zhang Xiaochuan was puzzled. They had been chatting well just a moment ago, so why was he suddenly being sent away? He asked, what do you mean? We were having a good conversation. Why the sudden dismissal? Are you disrespecting me? Shi Taixin thought to himself, if I were to disrespect you, I would just call someone to throw you out. You come here to waste my time, and then say I'm not giving you face. Instead, he said, the places you mentioned are all rocky terrains, very difficult to cultivate. How can those refugees support themselves? Even if I agree, how can you convince those refugees? So, there is no need for us to continue this discussion. Zhang Xiaochuan replied, your concerns are not unfounded. I can sign a contract, promising to settle those 10,000 people properly, and there won't be a single person escaping. Shi Taixin had seen contracts in the Liao family before, and upon hearing about signing a contract, he thought it was absurd. He said, this is civil affairs, it cannot be taken lightly. His meaning was that signing a contract was just an agreement among ordinary people, and it wouldn't hold in official matters. It seemed that ancient people had a very superficial understanding of the role of contracts. Zhang Xiaochuan earnestly said, whether it's serious or not is not important. What matters is that these refugees have been gathering for several days, and now in Yizhou and Shuzhou, the land is filled with starving corpses. According to my plan, even if it fails, the responsibility will fall on my family. If it succeeds, you will also share in the credit. Such a beneficial and effortless matter. Why wouldn't you want to participate? Moreover, I am willing to sign a contract with you. Shi Taixin thought about it and realized it made sense. He then said, there is no need to sign a contract. If you insist on this, it's not impossible. I'll write a document, and you can take it to have Zhang Xianman stamp it. I will grant you the land immediately. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaochuan felt it was reasonable and immediately left the official residence to find his elder brother. After some persuasion, he finally convinced Zhang Jingren to use the stamp. However, Zhang Jingren still felt that this matter was unreliable and definitely a trap for his brother. With the official document in hand, Zhang Xiaochuan was ready to persuade the refugees. But before that, there was another crucial step in settling the refugees, which was to provide them with temporary housing and food. Zhang Xiaochuan had already thought of a place to settle them, at the Liao family. Since the house was empty, it was just right for the refugees. There wouldn't be enough rooms for everyone, so the elderly, women, and children would be accommodated in the rooms, while others would temporarily stay in the open space. Once they arrived, they would first be fed and then organized to set up tents. The governor of Shuzhou coordinated with nearby county offices to send officials to help, and Zhang Jingren also dispatched a team, led by Bao Bo. At the same time, Zhang Xiaochuan ordered some non-essential tasks on the farm to be paused and redeployed 200 people to assist. Additionally, arrangements had already been made in Shuzhou and Yizhou to bring the refugees to the Liao family, and they were currently on their way. Zhang Xiaochuan gathered all the personnel to assign work. The group was divided into 5 teams. The first team of 100 was led by a robust man, primarily responsible for preparing food and utensils for the thousands. The second team of 100 was led by a guide, tasked with managing the needs of 100 displaced individuals each, addressing their basic requirements and issues. The third team of 50 was led by an elder, mainly responsible for purchasing and transporting supplies. The fourth team of 100 was led by another individual, focusing on maintaining order and safety, while also supporting the work of the other teams. The fifth team of 20 was led by a young man, primarily responsible for verifying the registration information of all personnel and making subsequent arrangements. Once the young man assigned the tasks, everyone got busy. At this moment, the first wave of displaced individuals arrived. accompanied by 100 stone units of grain. The one escorting the displaced individuals was another man, who seemed to have come out of concern that the young man wouldn't be able to handle the situation. However, upon seeing the somewhat chaotic yet orderly scene, he secretly praised the efforts, realizing his worries were unnecessary. Chapter 088. Meals for the displaced. The young man noticed his elder brother had arrived and was about to greet him when a woman hurriedly approached, explaining that there weren't enough hands to prepare food, and the robust man sent her to request assistance. The young man asked, "Isn't the other leader responsible for mobility? Why are they looking for more help from me?" The woman replied, "The other leader is currently busy sanitizing the newly arrived individuals, so they can't spare anyone at the moment. If they finish too late, it might affect the food preparation." As the young man looked around, pondering where to find help, he suddenly noticed the guide organizing those who had finished sanitization. He had an epiphany. There were people everywhere. He took the woman with him to find the guide, who was currently assigning a guide to the 100 individuals and selecting one man